Ladies and gentlemen, hello, good afternoon. Can you please take your seats?
Dobré odpoledne, přátelé, posaďte se, prosím. Zahájíme naši dnešní konferenci na téma Dohoda pro evropské zemědělce, vize EPP pro evropské zemědělství. Máme tlumočení v 11 jazycích. Čaj a kávu si můžete vzít vně sálu, ale nenoste je, prosím, sem. Konference skončí v 18 hodin, poté nás čeká taková drobná recepce v budově Spinelli, blok G, podlaží -1, kde se na vás budeme těšit. Bude to nepochybně vynikající příležitost, abyste se dále bavili o tématech, která dnes probereme nad sklenkou vína. Předseda EPP Manfred Weber vystoupí jako první. Bohužel řečník nemá zapnutý mikrofon, nelze tlumočit.
So good to have you here. I really want to thank you all for your participation. You have a great participation and we show one key message, and this key message is the European People's Party is the farmers' party of Europe, and we are proud about this. We are proud of this. I want to welcome, first of all, those who contributed and worked to prepare today's event. I want to thank first Siegfried Mureșan as respective responsible Vice President of Group and of Party, responsible for the agriculture field. It is Norbert and Herbert Dorfmann in front of me who are working then on the agri field directly here in the Parliament. It's great to have so many of our ministers. Great privilege to do so. Let me mention Maria as the guiding person in a way.
Omlouváme se posluchačům českého kanálu, ale bohužel signál z mikrofonu nejde.
Good policies if we coordinate among each other. That is EPP, and that is what we are preparing with today's conference. Again, a warm welcome to all of you. And when we speak now about the content, let me only give you some considerations from a more general point of view. First of all, we should never forget that food production, to care about the farmers' sector, was one of the founding ideas of creating today's European Union. That was crucial for getting a good start. And having the decades of European agriculture policy in mind, it is a huge success story that we did it together. So that, I think, is a starting point. It should motivate us to go further, to look now for the next step, what is in front of us. And having in mind the problems of our people today, look to inflation. Inflation is today driven not, first of all, by energy costs. That was 1 year ago the case. Today, inflation is mainly driven by food prices. So that is what people experience. Or look to also our broader global responsibility when it's about North Africa. We have now the Ukraine exports and so on, all these debates on the table. We have to contribute to a global solution on food production, enough food for all people on global stage. Having these challenges in mind, then food production, what our farmers are doing to produce good food in a sustainable way, is more important than ever before. That is, I think, a main message. We care about this. We respect what our farmers are doing every day. We don't see them, like the left, as a problem. We see farmers as a solution, as our answer for the future. That is, I think, a main message for EPP. And I want to also thank Ursula von der Leyen. We will have afterwards a video message from her. In her speech last week in the State of the Union, she was also outspoken. She was clear that this contribution of farmers is for us of high value, and food production will become probably in the next years even a strategic field where we have to care and we have to guarantee independence for the support and deliveries for our citizens. Finally, when we speak about farmers, it's clear that it is also linked to the
Hovoříme-li o zemědělcích, tak je evidentní, že to souvisí s budoucností venkovských oblastí. To jsou dvě spolu úzce související věci, takže se na to podívejme ze širší perspektivy. Jde o zemědělskou politiku a venkovský sektor, o které se EPP hluboce zajímá. A dovolte, abych také uvedl na tomto místě, že musíme respektovat ty, kteří milují svoji práci. Jsou to zemědělci, kteří obdělávají svá pole, starají se o svůj dobytek, milují svoji práci, pracují rádi jako zemědělci a to je nepochybně ohromná přidaná hodnota pro nás, pro všechny. Rozvoj venkovských oblastí nám leží na srdci a je to věc, kterou chceme zakomponovat také do našeho předvolebního programu, jakožto EPP. Chceme svým voličům říct, čeho chceme během příštích 5 let dosáhnout. Takže se naše diskuse bude orientovat na budoucnost.
I want to welcome you again. It's really impressive to see all seats full here in this plenary, that so many people care about the EPP political approach for the future of farmers and for the future of the rural areas. Welcome again. Good to have you here, and let's have a good, fruitful afternoon. Thank you.
Dear Manfred Weber, dear Siegfried Mureșan, dear Norbert and Herbert Dorfmann, ministers, representatives of farmers' associations, honourable members. Last year, I received a letter from a 14-year-old boy, Lorenz Hafermann, from my home region, Lower Saxony. He wrote me about his family farm and his hope that one day he will carry on the farm business and way of life. His story is the story of many farming families across Europe. And today I want to pay tribute to our farmers and thank them for providing us with healthy food every single day. Something that I think we tend to take for granted. You face huge challenges, from volatility in commodity prices, rising input costs and climate change. It is therefore not surprising that the number of young people who choose a career in farming is getting smaller and smaller. And this is one of the many challenges you face today. But there is nothing inevitable about this. I want young people from rural areas like Lorenz Hafermann to be able to follow their dreams by walking in their parents' footsteps. But to achieve this, we need to address some of the uncertainties faced by farmers today. So I would like to speak about how the European Union can contribute to building the future of European farming. European farmers are the custodians of the countryside, protectors of ancient customs and traditions. Yet many are also pioneers of a new kind of agriculture. You're adopting new technologies, from satellites to drones, to increase yields and bring down costs. You're managing your land to the benefit of nature. And you are embracing innovation. This is the future of agriculture. Yet the pace of innovation is still too slow. Farmers need adequate support and predictability to speed up this transformation. And let me just focus on 3 solutions that we are deploying together with you. The first is on data, the second on digital infrastructure, and the third on new genomic techniques. Let's look at the first one. Here in Europe, we have a wealth of data regarding the state of our land, especially thanks to our world-class satellite systems. The quality of our soil is visible even from space. We can measure its health, its moisture, and its capacity to absorb water. But this information is largely unused. So we have just decided to make this vast amount of knowledge available to European farmers. It's a powerful incentive to adopt high-tech solutions that will save money and inputs, especially water. My second point. How can you use data and AI if you do not have a high-speed internet connection? The digital transition requires infrastructure, such as data cables and 5G. And this is not always available outside big cities. You know the topic. But Europe is acting on this. 4 years ago, only 15% of our rural areas had access to high-speed internet. Now, thanks to massive investment supported by the European Union in these years, access is now up to 40%. And this is essential for young innovators who are keen to bring new digital solutions into the farming sectors. We need to reach 100%. So we will need young people with digital skills to see farming as a viable option for them. My third point is about scientists that are developing new crops that are more resistant to the disease or climate change. And this is really important for farmers. You can get a better harvest with less water and less pesticides. And this is why we have put forward a proposal on new genomic techniques to give more clarity to researchers and more options to farmers. Europe is a global innovation leader, and we will put our technological progress at the service of our agriculture. Dear friends, let me go back to the letter I received last year. Lorenz reflected what I have heard from many of you. That too often farmers are blamed for climate change and biodiversity loss, when instead you are the guardians and custodians of nature. And on top of this, farmers are among the main victims of climate change. You are hit by the impact more than anyone else in Europe. Yields are decreasing. Livestock suffers where there are droughts and floods. In the region of Andalusia, climate-related drought is taking on dramatic dimensions. Farmers are expecting harvest declines of around 30%. And the toll of extreme weather is rising every year across Europe. Wildfires in Greece and Spain have burned ancient olive trees and killed hundreds of animals. I witnessed with my own eyes the devastating floods in the plains of Italy and the valleys of Slovenia. I saw the land underwater, the crops lost to mud, the farmers' distress. And I want you to know that Europe is at your side. This year alone, we have put forward almost 500 million euros for farmers in need. And we have set aside 1/3 of our common agricultural policy to help farmers adopt natural solutions against the impacts of climate change. This is almost 100 billion euros in investment by 2027. Europe is your best ally as you protect crops and animals from floods or fire. And there is another issue that we care deeply about. One where dialogue or your input is essential to address the risks. I'm talking about large predators and the threat they pose to our animals. Farmers have been saying for years that the growing number of wolves in some areas is a danger for livestock and humans. But to identify those areas where wolves pose a greater risk to local communities, we need to hear from you, local associations and authorities. You will now have a chance to share your data, your specific situation and concern. And this will then guide further our action for wolf management. Our overall goal to protect nature and biodiversity remains the same, but we can and we will find targeted solutions to protect your livelihoods. Dear friends, I am deeply convinced that agriculture and nature can go hand in hand. But we must look into the challenges that farmers face so that you can continue to guarantee Europe's food security also in the future. And for this, we need an ever closer cooperation with the farming sector. This will be central to the next phase of the European Green Deal. Our legislative framework has now essentially been set. Our core focus today must be to support every economic sector throughout the transition with tailor-made approaches, including, of course, the farming sector. We need more dialogue and less polarization. And for this reason, we would like to start a strategic dialogue with you on the future of agriculture in the European Union. We know that many policy areas, not just the common agricultural policy, impact our farmers. We can better coordinate those policies. Europe needs to secure what we have today, great choice of food across our many regions. We need to work with nature. We need to work with science. Europe needs your voice so that we can shape this new phase together and secure the future of European farming. Thank you very much, and let me wish you a very good conference.
And to conclude the introductory part of our conference, a special intervention by the Minister for Agriculture of Croatia, Marija Vučković, who is also the coordinator of the EPP Agri-Fish Ministers Platform. Minister, please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear farmers, dear representatives of young farmers and members of our political family, the European People's Party, it is a great honor and a pleasure to speak before you on this important occasion, and I want to thank the party leadership and colleagues from the European Parliament for once again, through this conference, clearly saying that we are the voice of European farmers and rural communities, for once again clearly standing out as agriculture is a strategic sector that creates food security and dynamic, economically vital rural areas. At a time when unaccepted crisis tests are justified strategic goals that go beyond the present goals for the 21st century and more, it is good to remember the foundations that created the longest lasting and most integrated European policy, the agricultural policy. And these foundations were, and still are today, increasing agricultural productivity by promoting technical progress and making rational and responsible decisions related to the use of resources. Market stabilization, food at affordable prices for our people, dignity of life and stable income that will not deter people from engaging in this strategic, economic and security field of our complete society. Over time, as I stated at the beginning, the basic strategic goals were upgraded by the need to deal braver and more decisively with the fact that our biological resources are limited, that there is a need and opportunity to take better care of them. In addition, we are tested in a tragic way with natural disasters, catastrophic events, especially floods, droughts and fires, which unfortunately takes human lives, what is irrecoverable, and additionally reduce yields, decrease production and increase uncertainty. European farmers, therefore, guided by the ambitious European policy of transforming the continent with a message to the rest of the world, have accepted to contribute to the new green, digital and geopolitical Europe. We, the European People's Party, are aware of this ambitious goal, just as we are aware of the need to protect nature and the world which we live in. Therefore, compared to many other, probably less responsible political options, we promote dialogue and partnership between agriculture, nature and our society. But we pay special respect to our farmers. We will support them in the changes that are necessary to preserve resources, reduce waste, strengthen resilience and contribute to the coexistence of food production and nature in the future. But we can do it only by strong common agricultural policy with enough sources, focused and applicable investments in research and development and dedication to the result in a short run. Additional instruments to support, simply said, all other necessary goals and actions which will erase the differences between rural and urban. Dear friends, I think this is the right place and great moment to say that common agricultural policy also needs to be simplified with the removal of all unnecessary administrative barriers that make our farmers dissatisfied and less willing to do what they know best, to produce food. And finally, together with other instruments promoting holistic approach indeed, covering all pillars of sustainability, economic, social and ecological, able to face with crisis and disturbances as the leaders of green and digital transformation, I think we are here to confirm our strong political will to do those basic goals of agricultural policy: achieving better life and income for our farmers, equal treatment and fair conditions without losing competitiveness for our producers for food production, aiming to have a strong food production because that is the only way to have an independent and strong Europe. Thank you once more.
Thank you. And now we come to the first of our two panels for today, which is on the EPP vision for the environmental sustainability of agriculture. This panel will be moderated by the chair of the Parliament's Agriculture Committee, Norbert. During both panels today, members of the audience are welcome to ask questions. Should you have a question, please raise your hand, and one of my colleagues will come over to get your name and who you represent. Please keep your questions under 1 minute so we can have a lot of questions. And now Mr. Linz will open the panel and introduce the distinguished panelists.
Thank you very much, Owen. Thank you all for coming here to the plenary of the European Parliament to discuss the vision, our vision of the future of environmental sustainability of agriculture. And as President von der Leyen just stated in her keynote, the farmers are facing huge challenges coming up in the future. The combination of a stable agriculture and a sustainable protection of our environment are crucial for the upcoming years of agriculture and farming in the European Union. Therefore, it is an honor for me to welcome our guests, and I invite them to join me here on the stage. First, Professor Tia Hennessy. She is Head of School and Chair of Agri-Food Economics at Cork University Business School. As a special intervention speaker, she did research in sustainable development of agri-food sector with focus on the impact of public policy on farm sector. And she is a member of European Commission's Farm Accountancy Data Network. Please join me here. Then I would like to welcome Marek Výborný. He is Minister for Agriculture of the Czech Republic since 2021. Please come to the stage. And the next one is Peter Kullgren. He is Minister for Rural Affairs of Sweden and former Deputy Party and Party Secretary of the Christian Democrats from Sweden. Please, Peter, join me here at the stage. The next one is Norbert Tocznik. He is Minister from the Federal Ministry for Agriculture, Forestry, Regions and Water Management of Austria and former Head of Office and later Director of the Austrian Farmers Association. Please, Norbert, join us here at the stage. Then I would like to welcome Julien Dief. He is Vice President of the Committee on Economic Affairs of the National Assembly in France since 2020. And last but not least, I would like to invite Roswitha Geier-Fessler. She is an organic farmer, Vice President of the Farmers Association in Baden-Württemberg since 2022. She worked for several farmers associations since 2002. And she was president of the board of young farmers for several years. Welcome to all of you here on stage, and all the panelists I would like to welcome. And now we will start with the special intervention of Professor Tia Hennessy. You have the floor, please, for 8 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be here, and I'm very honoured to be invited by the EPP to give this special intervention on agriculture and environmental sustainability. So what do we mean when we talk about sustainability in agriculture? For me, it's about balancing global food security with environmental protection. And global food security has become a very live issue in the last 2 to 3 years. Following the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in the Ukraine, we've seen millions of people in the most vulnerable parts of the world fall into food insecurity and die of starvation and hunger. We know that the world population will continue to grow, and we need a food system that can deliver enough food to the population at an affordable price. And I emphasise affordable price, because access to food at an affordable price for the poorest in society is a very important part of security. We can talk about environmental sustainability solutions that will increase costs of production, will reduce productivity, but these will not deliver affordable food. A truly sustainable food system needs to produce food at a low economic cost and a low environmental cost. The social issues, as we know, are also important. As Europeans, much of our culture and identity is embedded in what we eat, where it's produced and how it's produced. A European sustainable food system needs to protect traditional farming methods, traditional values and communities. So we know that the social, economic and environmental measures are important. When we talk about food systems, the focus always tends to be on production. The question is always asked, what more can farmers do? But we know with a sustainable system, all in the supply chain must play their role, including consumers and food businesses. Over a third of food that's produced is never consumed. It's wasted by consumers or lost in the food supply chain. So we need to invest in circularity and minimise food waste. And the final aspect of sustainability that is very important, in my view, is innovation. And we heard that from the President of the Commission. The need to invest in research to find new solutions, the need to have innovative business leaders to find new business models, and the need to have open-minded consumers and communities to move to more sustainable consumption. So we can agree that sustainability is a very broad concept and involves all stakeholders in the supply chain. But today I have been asked to focus on the environmental aspects only and the farm level actions. So we know that farm and the environment are intricately linked. We know that food production delivers many very important ecosystem services. Traditional farming methods can protect habitats for flora and fauna, can protect soil health, and can deliver sinks for carbon in the forms of soil, trees and forestry. But we also know that there are negative impacts. The impact of food production on water quality and air, and in particular I want to focus on climate change. We know that across the EU, agriculture accounts for 11% of greenhouse gas emissions, 94% of ammonia emissions. I come from Ireland, and this is a particularly challenging issue in Ireland because over a third of all of our greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture. We have many national, global and EU policies that set targets at a national level for what we must achieve. But we know that these can only be delivered by action taken by individuals like farmers. So what solutions exist? Many scientific solutions exist, many mitigation measures exist, but how do we get them implemented? So I want to talk for a little while about some research we have conducted in Ireland. We have, at the national level, development a marginal abatement cost curve. What this does is reviews all of the research in the area of climate change in agriculture, identifies the technologies, the solutions and the measures that can be adopted by farmers. The research suggests if those measures are adopted by the vast majority of farmers, we can go a very long way to reaching our carbon reduction commitments. But how can we incentivise this change? When we look at those measures, they run across a vast array of very expensive things to implement and some that are much easier. If we look at the easier or less costly options to be implemented, we're looking at things like more efficient use of inputs, better use of grass in the animal's diet, more effective use of nitrogen, use of protected urea, use of multi-species swards, and there are many strategies. As we move along that marginal abatement cost curve, those mitigation strategies become more expensive to adopt. There are things like feeding animals methane-reducing feed additives, investing in breeding to breed more carbon-efficient animals, which is a much longer process. And then finally, at the end of that marginal abatement cost curve, we come to things that require a real mindset change for farmers. Moving to organic production, moving away from livestock production to other forms of production, planting forestry, planting energy crops. When we were conducting this research, we consulted farmers on these mitigation measures, and the results that we received are similar to what we've heard from the other speakers so far today. Farmers are tired of being viewed as being part of the problem. They want to be part of the solution, and they are prepared to go on this journey and adopt many of these mitigation measures. But these are expensive things to do. The barriers to adoption are financial, their knowledge, their uncertainty. So what can we do here in Brussels to support farmers and to incentivise this change? Interestingly, my first point was one that has already been picked up by President von der Leyen. My suggestion was that we need to invest more in accounting for nature at the farm level. We have a lot of data. We can understand our baseline starting position. We've set targets at a national level, but farmers don't know their own individual number. They don't know their carbon footprint. They need good data on where to start. They need to understand how mitigation measures can reduce their carbon footprint. We need to invest in education and advisory to transfer those solutions to the farm level. And we need to invest in adoption, because these measures are costly. They're costly in terms of applying them, or they're costly in terms of profit foregone. And the question then is, who will bear this cost? We're familiar with the concept of a just transition. That is that as we transition to a more sustainable future, the effort and the cost should be shared by all in society. And sometimes the term just transition is a controversial one when we talk about agriculture, because for some it's suggesting a transition out of agriculture. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's a transition by those in agriculture to a more sustainable future still within the sector. And those costs should be borne across the supply chain and not only by farmers. The costs are likely to be threefold. We need to invest in science and education to develop new solutions around climate and agriculture. We have big budgets in terms of the European Research Council, Horizon 2020, and these are directed towards independent researchers who are not trying to capture the solutions for profit. We need to invest in education, and we need to incentivise change by farmers in terms of covering those adoption costs. We say everybody in the supply chain should pay, but will consumers pay more for food? I think what we've learned over the last 2 years of very high food prices is that the tolerance and the capacity to pay more for food is limited. So we need to use our budgets within the CAP and other places more effectively. We've come a long way in designing results-based schemes where farmers have baseline indicators, they undertake actions, they're rewarded for results. And this needs to be the future of the Common Agricultural Policy to tackle climate change as well. But when I say this in Ireland to farmers, they say, but that budget is already using to cover all the costs we already incur. We can't do more with the same budget. So the question is the budget sufficient? Can we develop more targeted and effective policies? And I think these are the key questions that I'm looking forward to hearing about today. And thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks very much to Thea Hennessy, and I think with this we saw your presentation how important science is, how important a science-based approach is, and how science can help the future of a sustainable and environmental friendly agriculture. Now I give the floor to Marek Výborný, who is Minister for Agriculture of the Czech Republic. Please, you have the floor.
Vážené kolegyně, vážení kolegové.
Dear colleagues, dear farmers, dear young farmers, and all participants taking part in the EPP conference. I'd like to tell you that the chosen topic is only proof of the fact that we are all interested in agriculture, and we have to be as well. I'd like to pass my thanks to the previous speakers and also to the President of the European Commission. The topics that have been already mentioned here are common to all of us. We live in a time of global challenges, be it political instability, climate change, or rise in prices for energy. European Union must come with pragmatic and sustainable solutions. There are goals of the European strategies such as the Green Deal or the From Farm to Fork concept or strategy. It's obvious that we have to secure a competitive food production in the EU. As the EPP family, we always were on the side of the farmers, and I wish that this remains in future as well. Common agricultural policy, if it should be strong policy, will definitely play a fundamental role in this respect. We have to secure an appropriate budget of the CAP also for the next programming period. The experience so far of the implementation of the CAP, it becomes obvious that we need simpler rules and also make sure that the farmers will be able to work in financially stable environment. It can be stated in general terms that reducing red tape is highly important. This is an issue which is very often raised to us by farmers, and it is a goal for EPP, namely to be able to reduce red tape and make the life of farmers easier. It's important that farmers work in the fields and don't sit at a desk filling in various forms. Interventions focused on adaptation and mitigation of climate change is also important. Here I can mention new technologies in precision agriculture, retention of water in the land, and also friendly working the land. We have inherited the land from our fathers and grandfathers, and it should be in our program of the EPP that we will make sure that we will hand our land over to next generations. It has to be stated that we must move from words to deeds, because the situation is critical. There are droughts in Spain, there are floods elsewhere, and these are all phenomena of the climate change to which we have to respond. That's the only way out. The present agriculture can be characterized by ever so more integrated production. Parameters of ecological production are important. They help to achieve goals of the Green Deal. On the other hand, we have to bear in mind that also the conventional agriculture must be ecological. We have to bear in mind that those working within conventional rules have to contribute to achieving goals which we set ourselves in terms of the care for land and for the soil. Safe food production is a topic that is widely discussed across the EU. It's all based on achieving environmental goals of the agriculture. Applied research, experimental development and innovations aiming at adaptation to climate change must be at the core of our activities. I'm happy to have heard the words of Ursula von Leyen in terms of science and innovation. We will definitely be able to provide subsidies to farmers in order for them to be able to use new technologies such autonomous means or technology and drones, for example. These novelty features will be necessary in order to bring new methods to practice. Introducing new technologies to the agriculture will also improve the food production and improve the environmental protection. Supply chain will also be reduced. This, all in all, will better protect soil as the very basis of the food production. In the context of the very rapid development of modern technologies, it is necessary for the legislation to respond adequately and quickly to all the challenges. And these challenges will be there for not the current parliament but also for future MEPs in whose ranks the EPP members will play a vital role. Ladies and gentlemen, we must not underestimate the importance of ecological agriculture. We have to support agriculture and in turn help all citizens. I'll be happy to see our ability to support farmers and also make sure that farmers will be able to work environmentally friendly. This is our common goal, and there's environment and agriculture. These two aspects must contribute hand in hand to the future of Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention, and I have to apologize. I will have to leave this conference. I wish you good deliberations. We still have a team of MEPs here, so I will be made familiar with the conclusions of this conference, and I hope that we will be able to bring the conclusions into practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marek Weboni, and he told us that he has to leave earlier, or he has to leave now, and we will immediately continue with Peter Kullgren, the Agriculture Minister of Sweden. I have to remind you with the time limit, 5-6 minutes, because we see the risk running out of time, and I would again let you know or remind you that there is a possibility to ask questions. There are people around. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and afterwards we have to do a selection, and we will try to select some questions and try to answer them. Peter Kullgren, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Norbert. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to the EPP Group, to Mr. Mureșan, Mr. Linz and Mr. Dorfmann for organizing this important meeting. Dear Chairman, dear Ministers, Member of European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. As I was coming here, I couldn't help but think about farming and how farming and politics is a little bit alike. Both requires a lot of hard work, being able to think long-term, and occasionally you have to deal with a bit of bull. We Christian Democrats, the European centre-right, have much to be proud of when it comes to what has been achieved in the field of agriculture. Europe is today an agriculture powerhouse. Europe is in the front lines of fighting against hunger. Europe is feeding the world. However, I am somewhat concerned that at times we seem to lose our bearings when it comes to what we must do to achieve a green transition, especially within the agriculture and forestry sector. Too much political focus has been misplaced. Because what we want is for our farmers to go through a green transition, not a green end-of-life termination. What do I mean by that? Well, basically, what we need to focus on is to remove carbon emissions from the entire agriculture value chain. The technology exists to start to transiting to green fertilizers, to power tractors with biodiesel, to produce hydrogen with fossil-free energy, and to completely eliminate emissions from transportation throughout the whole value chain of food production. This needs to be the priority. Agriculture and forestry are not obstacles to green transition. They are building blocks for a future bioeconomy. Yet, despite this, we often get caught up in issues that misses the mark. The European Union's hesitant attitude towards forestry is a prime example of this. Forestry is the cornerstone of a new bioeconomy. It is what we can build the rest of the future green economy on. We need to remember that wood is the original renewable resource. However, tree trunks are round, while timber is square. This means that there will always be a significant byproduct when logging. We can use these byproducts for green energy, among other things. Let's do this. Let's use this energy to create a circular system. And if we are serious when we say we want to build new bioeconomy, we cannot have legislation like the nature restoration law. That would potentially take millions of acres of forest out of production now when we need them the most. Another example where the debate tends to go wrong is often one-side attitude, mainly from the left, toward the cattle and dairy industry. I fully support the technological advancement, and therefore I often say that if cows didn't exist, we would have to invent them. Cows consume things that humans often cannot eat and turn them into nutritious food in the form of meat and milk. They even provide us with natural fertilizers as an extra bonus, while at the same time contributing to biodiversity in grazing lands, when they are also sequestering carbon into the soil. Cows are miracle machines. Yet, these beautiful animals are now vilified. It is claimed that their methane emissions are too high, but we have always had cows in Europe. A life-giving cow, Audhumbla, is the central figure in modern creation myth. Humans and cows are interlinked throughout history. Therefore, I was not surprised when a new study, funded by the World Wildlife Fund, showed that Sweden has the same methane emissions from livestock today as we did over 100 years ago. It is not our cows that are driving global warming, it is the carbon. And a third example, all too often climate issues are approached from a top-down perspective, and that won't work. One of the worst examples I've seen was when the new Nordic nutrition recommendations were presented this summer. Not an EU issue per se, but indicative of an all too common attitude. The sustainability aspects presented in these new recommendations were based on a type of global average diet, on a global average conditions for agriculture. But there is, of course, no real-life country named average. In Sweden, in a normal year, for example, we don't have significant problems with water scarcity. In other countries, it is the crucial issue for farmers. In Sweden, we struggle to keep agricultural land in use due to lacking demand. In other countries, there is a shortage of farmland. We must start from local conditions. It would be absurd to tell a Swedish farmer to cease their dairy production because based on a global average, they are statistically contributing to scarcity of agricultural land and fresh water. And one last brief example where we have gone wrong in the past. If we want farmers to be a part of the green transition, rather than facing a green termination, we must improve the living conditions of those who work the land and live in the rural areas. I therefore greatly applaud the Commission's initiative to review the wolf's protection status. The wolf is not threatened today, but it threatens parts of rural areas and seriously disrupts living conditions on the countryside. To summarize, let us continue to be trailblazers. Let us do this by focusing on replacing fossil carbon with green alternatives. Let us do this together with our farmers and based on various local conditions, in accordance with the principle of subsidiarity. The European agriculture powerhouse needs a green transition. We cannot be contented with a green termination. So let's get back to basics. Thank you.
Thanks very much to Peter Kuldwin for your speech and particularly for reminding us how important biomass is, that biomass plays an important role when it comes to the decarbonization of our economy, not only plant-based biomass, but in particular woody biomass, which is not only important for Sweden, but I think for Austria as well. And the floor is now with Norbert Tocznik. Please, Norbert, you have the floor.
Sehr geehrter Herr Fraktionsvorsitzender,
Dear Group Chairman, dear Manfred Weber, dear Ministers, dear MEPs, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this invitation. It's a huge honor for me to be able to talk to you here and as European Parliament today for a sustainable future of European agriculture and forestry. We have to have supply security and climate protection. They have to go hand in hand. My political foundation for this purpose is the model of eco-social agriculture, ecological responsibility, economic feasibility and social responsibility. Austrian agriculture is clearly in favor of climate protection, the Paris objectives, and really we are very strongly involved here and concerned by climate change. Agriculture in an ecological responsible way has been a major topic for decades now, and we have implemented this into practice. The Common agricultural policy is an ideal foundation for sustainable activity. More than 210,000 hectares of biodiversity and nature protection areas, an increase by 40% as compared to the last legislature, and 80% of farmers are working within the agricultural environmental program, and almost 28% of surfaces are now produced in an organic way. Climate protection is involved into meat and dairy production as well. For 1 kilo of milk, only almost 1 kilogram of CO2 equivalent. So 1 kilo of meat, 16 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. So within Europe, we are among the best, and we have to improve ourselves because it simply is part of the objectives. The reformed and very ambitious CAP is really a challenge for a huge number of farmers. Additionally, we have a lot of legislative proposals within EU strategies with fundamental consequences for the agricultural sector as well. A lot of farmers are wondering now, how can we cope with all this? How will it be possible to implement all this? Only with politically imposed reductions and appeals to reduce production activities is not enough. We have to explain why and how we want to achieve these objectives, with what kind of innovations, with what kind of technologies, and at what cost. Just an example. Our major position in the area of organic agriculture has been based on an incentive-based agricultural policy. For that purpose, we've been working very hard for decades in the preparation phase. Objectives have to be realistic and close to practical possibilities, and a differentiated and critical discussion has to take place concerning objectives to be reached without being just entitled to be against any climate policies. If we have two measures that are too strong, we will reduce competitiveness of the agricultural sector and lead to more dependency on agricultural imports. This cannot be the objective, and quite rightly the European Commission is indicating the importance of strategic autonomy for the European Union in this area. In order to secure the supply, we need producing and area covering agriculture and forestry, reinforcing our regions. Within the Green Deal, the Commission is obliged to deliver here for a central element. A green growth strategy has to be implemented in order to make sure that wealth for future generations is ensured. A topic that's quite emotionally discussed in major European regions in this area has to be mentioned as well. The question how the increased concentration of wolf packs in certain regions of Europe has to be treated. They are a danger for users and potentially even for humans. We need urgently a continued development of the European nature protection legislation in order to make sure that the European agricultural areas can be protected. Climate protection and agriculture can go hand in hand. We have an active forestry production activity. With global warming, our objective has to be to find forests that are climate fit and more resilient. Timber to be used as an active production means, and invest in wood-based bioeconomies, for instance. On the long run, a forest that is not being used, linked to natural processes, will not remain as a clima-neutral factor. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome the announcement of the Commission President to have an active dialogue concerning the future of agriculture, and at the same time I would like to indicate that with the common agricultural policy we all already have a very efficient tool for the strategic orientation of European agricultural policy. This has been and still is linked to continuous reform processes and is also taking into account the societal needs. European Farmers' Deal, for me, ladies and gentlemen, is a real growth deal ensuring wealth for European farmers and all European citizens. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much to Norbert Tocznik, and in particular that you reminded us that farmers are facing huge challenges when it comes to the implementation of the current CAP, and they are still working on that, and there are a lot of incentives for a more environmental friendly agriculture. Now the floor goes to Julien Dive, Vice President of the Committee on Economic Affairs of the National Assembly in France. The floor is yours.
Merci. Mesdames et messieurs.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, dear presidents, dear members of parliament, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Year after year, the agricultural situation has been deteriorating in European fields. In France, for instance, we've seen catastrophes develop with droughts and fires in the centre of France, with exceptional freezing episodes in the vineyards of Bourgogne. Just to mention these examples, our farmers are confronted to disastrous consequences. These images are the brutal face of climate change and its impact on our agriculture. Ignoring this would not be responsible. We are confronted with a dual challenge which has an impact on agriculture. External factors such as extreme climate factors and diseases that destroy our crops and threaten our agricultural security. But second, the constraints, the red tape and the activists' pressure. The problem is even worse in France. Indeed, we have an over-integration of European rules which creates a deadlock and a dead end for our farmers, as we've seen recently with the sugar beetroot sector recently. The nature restoration law, which was adopted by the European Parliament, jeopardizes the food safety of the European Union. It forces governments to do the impossible, going back to 70 years of changes and going back to 25 years of changes in nature. This goes well beyond the global objectives our states have subscribed to, and it leads to reducing our productive areas without taking into consideration the social impact. We will soon have 10 billion inhabitants on this planet. Hence, the inflationist context. Imagine if Europe was to import its food from foreign countries overseas, where standards are absolutely not comparable to ours. A number of sectors are in great difficulty and see their production diminish without a real alternative solution. It is high time to appease this decision-making cacophony which forces farmers to respect more and more rules. And yet, on the other hand, France seems always ready to sign new free trade agreements, which is one more attitude leading to the decline of our sanitary products are used in Latin America when they are prohibited in the EU. The Amazonian forest will further deteriorate and, of course, have disastrous consequences on biodiversity and the situation of our citizens. Let's see the size, let's measure the size of these challenges and make the right decisions. Our objective is not simply to watch from the sideline, but rather be proactive and make sure the expectations of our farmers are at last taken on board. Hence, the support to our colleagues from the EPP. I have started with a few colleagues to visit farms to discuss a draft bill of law that will be discussed in the in the French Parliament at the end of the year. And all farmers tell us the same thing. Do trust us. One of the pillars of this text is about transition and adapting to climate change. But to ensure the continuity of our food production, it is essential to provide farmers with the tools and means necessary. Hence the need to innovate in the farming sector, investing in research and development and new, more environmentally friendly technological practices, developing techniques that will help our farmers live and have well-being. This means studying whenever necessary the adoption of new selection techniques. Let's trust science, especially when innovation could help develop new, more resilient varieties of culture, resisting to pests and climate changes, especially if it means having more sustainable, more resilient and more productive seeds, and therefore guaranteeing sustainability in European agriculture. Agriculture can also be an asset in fighting climate change and preserving water, but this can be achieved only if we celebrate the vital role of our farmers in preserving the environment. We should therefore recognise the courage as well as the resilience of our farmers and put them at the heart of our efforts to build a sustainable future. Hence, the 4 priorities I suggest. First, give the right financial and material resources to anticipate change and the consequences of climate change. Water, making its use, its preservation and storage as well as treatment the European cause of this destiny. There will be no future without water. Promoting the setting up of new farmers to guarantee the sustainability of the sector while injecting new ideas in the sector, not imposing restrictions without offering viable, economically viable alternatives, keeping a pragmatic approach to find solutions to climate change. Protecting agriculture when faced with climate change is not simply vital for our farmers, it is vital for our economy, our economic sustainability and our planet at large. In parallel, we are responsible for taking the measures necessary to preserve our planet, the one that we will give to our future generations, thanks to agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much to Julia Div, and I think you made us aware that how important technology innovation is, and again you reminded us about the science-based approach. Now the floor goes to Rosi Geier-Fessler, organic farmer and vice president of the Farmers Association in Baden-Württemberg. Please, you have the floor.
Sehr geehrte
Ministers, members of parliament, ladies and gentlemen, dear farmers, the young farmers, farming from the point of view of an organic farmer from Baden-Württemberg. It's an interesting question for this highly qualified group here. Thank you very much for the invitation. All of you sitting here, you have a direct and indirect influence on what we do. On account of your decisions, you decide how agriculture will be in Germany, Europe, Baden-Württemberg, and particularly in my home region, Allgäu. So we're putting all our trust and hope in you. First, I'd like to stress that I'm a farmer, through and through, organic farmer for more than 10 years. My everyday work is a great pleasure. I like to go to the stable, work with our animals and the nature. The factors and the close living together with my husband and our 3 children makes this job my profession. my calling. We have about 60 milk cows. We have our own calves. So we rear our own cows and calves and heifers. 98% of what the cows eat is pasture. We have 40 hectares. It's in a disadvantaged region, a water protection region, a bird protection region, and a landscape protection region, just to mention a few of them. The planned biosphere reserve we're against that, although we are organic farmers. In addition to working in the forest, we also we have photovoltaic panels on our roof where they should be, we believe. So we're an average farm in Baden-Württemberg. Yesterday, when I talked to the representation of our land here in Brussels, the dialogue was presented. I think our state, our federal state, does many things correctly. We have family farms which are actually managed by their families. The difference between organic and conventional farms is not a big stream, but it's only a small brook. The early measures in 1998, the introduction of MECA in 1992, or the directive on landscapes, because of this, our farms got state support for protecting the environment, whether you're an organic farmer or conventional farmer. That was the right track. In the meantime, we have a regional FACT program, and 40% of the support is paid to 14% of organic farmers, and despite state support, we, in terms of income, we are at the very end in Germany, at the very bottom, which means that our farms cannot generate enough added value on the market for their products, and even the state support is not sufficient. And only if the economy is right, farms are able to combine social and ecological measures. There are only two possibilities. Either the consumer pays or the state pays. This is a tension which, despite many efforts, will not be solved quickly. Although all actors, and particularly the families and farmers, wish that we farmers should not only produce healthy foodstuffs, good foodstuffs, but also protect biodiversity, the climate, the quality of the water, and our landscapes. That's a big challenge. That's a big ask, particularly because some of the rules are difficult, particularly for slurry. Our most important fertilizer is a big problem. We need big tractors to spread the slurry in strips. That's no longer a solution for us. Our minister knows that already. So we have a new labeling for animal husbandry in Germany, which is being introduced, but we want a clear support for animal husbandry. Also, a revisiting of the protection status of wolves. Our heifers come back from the higher ground, but not all. Probably some were attacked by wolves, and each animal we lose is always a loss because we rear these animals with lots of love. The trees, and particularly the fruit trees where they stand, are unique. It's a paradise for animals and for people. This fruit can never achieve the same price on the market as that we need to keep these meadows. When we don't have enough people to pick these fruits. So how do we handle this? All the efforts to obtain better pay have failed. Should the state help us, not through bans, but through incentives? So if we look further, there are many other larger topics than these orchards. Mercosur, we need external protection for our products. A minimum income. This is a huge distortion of competition for our farms. Nobody knows whether people work exactly and fulfill all of the conditions. First time we are grateful only to have pasture and not have arable crops. The perception in society, that's a problem. And finally, makes us sad and very awful, makes us doubt about what we do. The fears that are being we hear every day, we are affected too. We see there are many things, but we farmers are part of the solution and we are not the problem. I would like to ask you in this spirit to support our sustainable production of foodstuffs, support us, help us so that we can stay that way, so that we can survive tomorrow and that we can work tomorrow with pleasure and that we farmers have a future and provide good foodstuffs to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much to Roswitha Geier-Fessler, and I think it was very good not only to hear from politicians but from an active farmer as well, what their challenges are, which challenges they are facing and how much they did in the past and today when it comes to an environmental friendly agriculture system and agriculture production. Now it's up to you to ask questions, and there were a lot of participants who asked for the floor, and I'm sorry, I have to do a selection, and I have to limit your question time to 1 minute. And please let us know, not only ask your question, but let us know which or who of the panelists should answer your question. We start with Vladimir Bolea, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Moldova, and he is Minister of Agriculture. You have the floor. Is he? Yeah.
Bună ziua la toată lumea. Mă numesc Vladimir Bolea, sunt Ministrul Agriculturii din Republica Moldova, membru PAS, partid care face parte din familia partidelor EPP. Eu, în primul rând, vreau să vă mulțumesc frumos pentru susținerea acordată de către Parlamentul Uniunii Europene și către partidele din EPP în procesul...
We have no translation into...
Se aude?
Shall we try again?
Se aude?
Romanian is not in the languages, so this is the...
Nu se traduce?
Yeah, no, there is no interpretation.
Ce spune?
Yeah. Okay, so we will check this and we will come back to you. Then we'll go on with Miss Fontaine. Sorry, she's from the Greek Parliament. The floor is yours.
No, it works. Αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι, μιλώντας για βιωσιμότητα της ευρωπαϊκής γεωργίας, δεν μπορώ να μην αναφερθώ στο γεγονός ότι η χώρα μου, η Ελλάδα, τις τελευταίες ημέρες...
Sorry, no interpretation.
Dear colleagues, talking about sustainability, I cannot not to refer to the fact that over the last couple of weeks, my country, Greece, has been faced with a succession of natural disasters of truly biblical proportions. The major issue of climate change requires a thorough revision of the rules in effect on farm systems through an increase of the share of support destined for risk management in agriculture. Extreme weather conditions and the even more frequent hazards render the existing support tools are less effective. Consequently, I'm pleased to submit the following question. How important will the adjustment to climate change be within the next multi-annual financial framework? Does the European Commission intend to expand the Solidarity Fund and the Agriculture Reserve to address the climate change and the climate emergency of Greece? Does the European Commission consider proposing greater funds for prevention and adjustment to climate change in the next revision of the cohesion policy? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And then we go on with Marek Sawicki, who is a member of the Polish Parliament. Please, the floor is yours.
Dziękuję bardzo, panie. Thank you very much indeed. I am not only a member of the parliament, I am also a farmer. I was a Minister for Agriculture in Poland in the past. So what I would like to say, the topic of our discussion, the threat agriculture as threat to climate. Should we perceive it in this way? We know, we farmers know, we need to pass on our land to future generation. And this land needs to be in good condition. So we talk a lot about this. And I believe farming, agriculture is not a threat to climate. Agriculture is a solution to all possible climate threats. So we can treat it as part of closed economy, of circular economy. Agriculture can be self-sufficient in terms of energy. Agriculture can supply energy to other sectors. We can use wind energy, we can use sun energy, solar energy, and we can use waste from agriculture to produce energy. And thanks to this, agriculture can be perceived as a sector producing not just food, but also energy. In the European People's Party, we often talk about restricting the production of food in Europe. But what about food security globally? 10% of people globally suffer from hunger. We have, after all now, immigrant crisis in Lampedusa, in Belarus. These people, these migrants come to Europe because they want to find a better future. They don't want to be hungry, and they face hunger where they live. So we needed to think about the quotas, production quotas, which we produce in Europe, and about their export to other countries.
We will go again, try to Mr. Vladimir Bolea, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Moldova. Please now, I hope Romanian interpretation is working now.
Mulțumesc frumos.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I am the Minister of Agriculture in the Republic of Moldova, and I'm a member of a party which is a member of the family of EPP. First of all, I would like to thank the European Parliament members and the EPP members for supporting our membership adhesion to the EU, and we count on your support for the negotiation process. Dear colleagues and dear farmers, I would like to tell you that the agriculture in my country of the Republic of Moldova is in crisis, and the crisis is due to the climate changes, but also to the war in Ukraine. Along the decades, the EU has proved that solidarity and working together is the most important weapon against poverty. Over and over again, the EU has been supporting towards the people in need. Giving this and giving the fact that we are here together, I would like for you to include the farmers in the Republic of Moldova in all the programs that you develop in order to help the farmers in the EU, because we also need your support, and there are 5 other countries that are affected by the war, such as Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, but the Republic of Moldova is even worse affected by this war. And 80% of our farmers are in danger. 24% of the farmers in the Republic of Moldova are facing great difficulties and are in danger of going bankrupt. We have this slogan that if we help the Ukraine, we also help the Republic of Moldova. If we help the Republic of Moldova, we also help the Ukraine. And my question is, how do you think we can support the Republic of Moldova in this crisis, in this serial crisis provoked by the war?
Move to Tim Lombard, who is senator in Ireland. Where is he?
Back here in the back.
Yep, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. If I could just push my comments to Professor Hennessy and just acknowledge her contribution here to the conference this afternoon. She mentioned the issue about education. It's a really important theme for us regarding the farming community. The farming age of our population of farmers at the moment is something like mid-50s. It's a significant challenge to actually work on an educational model that's going to get involved in an age profile of that age profile. Maybe the professor might acknowledge that and work on how we're going to, interpret it, how we're going to work with that actual cohort of society itself. And regarding the issue of food waste, I think it's a really, really important point. I might ask about the food waste regarding, has she mentioned, is it the issue of at producer level, or is it the actual consumer is the major issue for food waste? Where is the education needed to go regarding making sure we can reduce that 30%, which is a very, very shocking figure itself? And I might ask Professor a third issue, which is about a big debate happening in Ireland at the moment, which he's probably aware about, which is about the nitrate derogation and food security for the world itself. Obviously, Cork is in the 250 zone regarding the nitrates. The Professor might give me an outline of where the Irish dairy industry falls into the world's food security model itself, and where she believes that could be, debated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Then we move to José Manuel Fernandez, who is a colleague from the European Parliament.
Thank you, and French. I think that we don't have also the Portuguese here. Bon, en premier un commentaire.
Thank you. A first comment. CAP should not mean one way of thinking. In some countries, there are different conditions, and there, the drought is a problem. We need water reservoirs for crops. And now comes another issue. Here's my question for the 3 ministers. Are you ready to defend an increase in the budget for the CAP? Because the challenges are huge. If you look at the farmers' income, it has gone down. We are facing an extraordinary situation. So don't you think that we should increase aid to farmers? I can tell you that the Parliament is ready to go. Now the question is, are you ready at the Council? Are you ready? This is my question to the 3 ministers attending today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last question goes to Mirjana Petir, who is chair of the Agriculture Committee in Croatia. Please, you have the floor.
Hvala vam, predsjedniče Lins. Hrvatska poljoprivreda prema ocjeni...
Thank you, Chairman. Croatia is using much less pesticides than the average in the EU. We have the best preserved biodiversity and the best potential for bioeconomy development. More than 50% of our territory is protected through various programs of nature protection. Our farmers live and produce in line with nature, and therefore they are worried when they see certain new European requests because they wonder if they will have to reduce their production and turn Croatia into reserves. And therefore I want to ask the Swedish minister who spoke about the approach bottom-up. Shouldn't we, when deciding about the measures to be taken in order to create a balance between the ecological and production needs, shouldn't we take into account the different starting positions of the member states? Because so far the decisions would be taken at the level of the EU without really consulting the local region in the process of the adoption of balanced decisions.
I think these were all very interesting questions. Not easy to answer them. I think there was one focused or was a question to you, dear Hennessy. It was from the Irish member of Parliament. Maybe you can come in on this. We start with you. I have to limit a little bit the time to more or less 2 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you, Senator Lombard, for your question, which had 3 elements, I think. So the first was around education on sustainability. And I suppose coming from a university that has a big agricultural science programme, sustainability is embedded in all of what is taught to young generation and the next generation of farmers. But I think you mentioned the challenge of rolling out new technology on existing farms. And I think this is where demonstration farms and the advisory service becomes very important. So we have some very successful examples of where cooperatives and food processors work with their farmers on education programs, and they do that with universities as well. And we have some examples of that in my own university. So I think it's learning by seeing solutions in action is what's important for more mature farmers, we might say. I think the second question related to food waste. So 1/3 of food is not consumed. That's a combination both of what's wasted by consumers and what's lost in the value chain. And I think there's opportunities to do better in both. I know that food companies are investigating a lot on improving packaging, life cycle, the shelf life of products, better education of consumers, smaller packets. So I think on the consumer side, it's very much around education. On the food loss side, I think it's around circularity and this investment in the circular model, valorising the byproducts of food production and of food waste. And we heard some comments about using some of those for energy production as well. So a lot of opportunities there, and actually a lot of advances that can be made in sustainability by just better using what's already produced. And the last point then I think relates to the nitrate situation in Ireland, which is very controversial. At the moment you asked about the contribution of the Irish dairy sector. It's one of the countries where milk production has increased significantly since the milk quota has been removed. We are a major exporter, which does bring sustainability challenges. But again, we are reminded that the data shows that Ireland is a very carbon efficient place to produce milk. Our carbon footprint is one of the lowest in Europe. It's a grass-based system, so there's a lot that's very good about the Irish dairy sector, but there's also challenges around water quality, and I suppose that's the centre of the issue in Ireland at the moment. So thank you, Senator, for your questions.
Thank you very much. And then there was the budget question from José Manuel Fernandez. This went to you, to both ministers, but Peter, maybe you could come in on that, on the budget question. And there was the question of Mirjana Petir directly to you. Maybe you want to answer on the question or the intervention from Marek Sawicki on circular economy as well, as it was part of your speech, please.
I will try. Of course, I also mentioned in my speech that we have to start by local conditions, and actually I see a problem with a lot of decision-making, legislation, regulation from the EU level that don't see the European Union as different as the member states actually are. We are together in this union because we have a lot of commons in culture, in values, but our landscapes, our countries, our environment in different member states are really different. We have come, the journey has come different way. You talked about pesticides, the use of pesticides. Of course, there's a problem for Croatia or Sweden if we should reduce it with 50% when we already are on a low level. And we can't have the legislations like that because it's unfair. We can't do that. We have to see each other's differences, and we should encourage the differences. In Sweden, we can do what we can do. In other countries, they can grow grapes or olives. We can't do that in Sweden. We are good in other things. So let's embrace our differences and stop with this silo thinking when we do our regulation or legislation. That's really important. And actually, I think that is more important than budget. In Sweden, we and I think that should be an EPP standing as well to take care of taxpayers' money, because that's in the end what it is. Of course, you can do your priorities within the EU budget. What should we spend our money on? I have no says about that, but of course we have to be careful with other people's money, and that's very deeply grounded in me. But I'm not in place to say anything about where we're going to land, but that's my say about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe Norbert, you can come in as well on the budget question. Maybe you can try to answer the question of the agriculture minister from Moldavia. How can we help Ukraine and Moldavia?
As
to the budget question, the members of the European Parliament know very well who negotiates the budget, and that's the heads of state and government. And this is where we need to start. Back home, with your own politicians, find alliances to show the importance of agriculture for production of foodstuffs, the importance for biodiversity and climate protection. And we all know the current inflation means that money is worth less, and that should be an incentive for all to have an adequate, to fight for an adequate budget. We've never had a commission proposal providing more for farmers, on the contrary. And therefore, my appeal to all of you here, for all of those who do politics for agriculture, find alliances, convince people so that the heads of state and government can come to Brussels to these negotiations with the right ideas. As to how we can help, solidarity for Ukraine, solidarity for Moldavia. Our approach in terms of the cereals exports, our approach is we need to make sure that the capacities are increased along the transport routes, that the capacities in the ports are increased. That's an important measure. The exports are vital for these countries, for Ukraine and Moldavia. And if we can create stable conditions, while at the same time ensuring a well-functioning European internal market, then that's a first step forward. And of course, beyond that, in our immediate neighborhood, we would like these countries to come closer to the European Union, and in that respect offer greater cooperation.
Rosita, you want to come in or to try to answer one of the questions, Julia? Yeah.
Merci.
Yes, well, something quite general.
Ναι, άκουσα τους διάφορους παρεμβαίνοντες και τις...
Regardless of the member states that we're coming from, the same question is asked over and over again. We see that people are afraid. They hear the same message. People are afraid of the future, the feeling that there could be a crisis which is hitting the EU today. And I would like to congratulate the EPP. The EPP is the first group that dared put the agricultural matter on the table. Food, farming, it's on the table here. It's been here for a while in Brussels, and it's good. It's good that we deal with this. It's of paramount importance, actually, because we are at a crossroads, you know. We are at a crossroads of generations, those who will retire, those who will not be able to keep working, will try to give the land to their children. It's here in Poland, in France, or wherever. Now, we need to work on our inputs, reduce inputs. Are we ready to trust science? Are we ready? We spoke about that, and I think we need to further deepen that matter. And thirdly, are we ready to do or make sure that farming become a strategic matter in our food sovereignty? We will face migration flows, huge migration flows that will keep increasing. There will be a problem, which is access to drinkable water. So farming, but also eating of food, must be a strategic challenge for the EU to make sure that nobody can starve to death in the EU, of course, but also around the world, and it was said before. I think this is what we need to remember today, and this is what we need to work on in our member states.
Vielen Dank für die Frage.
Thank you for the question. Actually, it's like you said, farmers are trying to survive. They want to give their farms to the next generation, and there's demand for all of us. So we have politicians actively involved here, but all consumers are also active politically when they do their shopping, choosing their supplies, and we have to have an active approach. I will choose certain types of food because they are protecting my region, they are protecting jobs, and they're preserving our cultural landscape. In the committee meeting this morning, good to hear that all of Europe is fighting along the same questions and challenges, and it's only when we come together and try to have major efforts produced collectively from all of us that we can restore trust amongst the farmers, also not only the consumers but the farmers, to continue their jobs. Thank you for your efforts. Continue like this, please.
Of the EPP vision on the environmental sustainability of agriculture, I think there were a lot of ideas. We saw a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience from science, from politicians, from an active farmer. I think we can be proud of our EPP, of our vision for more sustainable agriculture in the future. And with this, I would like to give back the floor to Alvin and then to the next panel. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a short technical break of around 5 minutes to prepare the next panel. So please don't go too far. While we do so, we will show you video stories involving the winners from the EPP's Youth Week earlier this month, and some interviews with young farmers where they describe the challenges they face. So see you shortly. Thank you.
There is an issue with farming today. It's not an attractive work environment, and we need to get more young people to see that there is a future in the agricultural business.
It's really important that we support our farmers and not demonise them and jeopardise their work, because we really rely on them.
We need maybe a doctor in our life, or maybe a teacher sometimes, but we need a farmer 3 times every day.
You need a master's degree in certain countries to become a farmer, which completely just breaks with
the stereotype that a lot of people have about farmers.
We need farmers to go back to rural Ireland. We need to entice young people to go back to rural Ireland and set up the supports for them when they are in rural Ireland, with education, with healthcare, with community and transport links. We really need to strengthen and empower people to live in rural Ireland again, because it's fundamental to functioning society.
Well, it's the future. It's about our future. Our generation is at stake here.
A lot of small farmers are giving up because they have to invest so much money to continue their farms. So that's a huge problem, because everyone wants regional products, everyone wants fresh milk and eggs. When we have such tight regulations, it's not possible, and I think that's heading in the wrong direction. I'm Anna, and I'm from the northwestern part of Germany, and I study agriculture and work in the agricultural business. On the weekends, I work at my neighbor's farm, and it's a dairy farm, and they have about 200 lactating cows, so I help them with milking the cows and do some practical work. The EU has to connect with the farmers, because I feel there's a huge gap between the practical farmers and the EU Parliament. So there's, for example, a regulation about the fertilizers used, and that has really been affecting all the farmers in my field, and they all struggle to follow these regulations, and I think that's really important. That's a good example for talk to the farmers and work on a solution together with the farmers, and not decide something above their heads. The EPP Group is one of the parties in the parliament that has quite a strong connection to farmers, so they try to fight for the farmers, and I think that's a really good start to make a change.
Test anglais, je retourne sur l'allemand ou pas? Ok. Test, je suis sur l'anglais. Tu veux que je revienne sur l'allemand? Voilà.
On en est où? Allemand c'est fait. Vous avez fait anglais ou pas?
Test anglais, Idriss, test anglais, test. Hésite pas à... Ok, anglais ok.
now.
I will tell you which number.
Now. Ladies and gentlemen, please be so kind as to take your seats. Maybe I should try it again. We are ready to begin. Please take your seats. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to begin. Please be so kind as to take your seats. Okay, please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to start now. We are ready to begin with the second of our two panels today. This panel is on the EPP vision for the economic and social sustainability of agriculture. It will be moderated by Herbert Dorfmann, the EPP's coordinator on the Agri Committee. Again, as in the previous panel, members of the audience are welcome to ask questions. Please take your seats. So if you have a question, as last time, please indicate it to one of my colleagues and give your name and the organization you represent. And 1 minute maximum, please, so we can have more questions. Having said that, over to you, Mr. Dorfmann, to open the panel and to introduce the distinguished panelists. Thank you.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, please take a floor so we can take a seat so we can start with the second panel of this afternoon. Yeah, I hope you are all fresh for the second panel. As you noticed, outside there's a coffee. We didn't make a coffee break, but for sure you can go out and take a coffee. We called our conference this afternoon a new farmers deal, and because we are convinced that this new farmers deal needs to be based on sustainability. But sustainability is a complex thing, as we already debated in the first panel. It has for sure an ecological dimension, but it has also an economic dimension. Sustainability means that the system, in our case a farm, can go on the long term, for years, for decades, for centuries maybe, remaining resilient, remaining vibrant. And to do this, clearly a farm needs to have also an economic success. And we want to speak in this second panel about this, about economic sustainability, and there are a lot of issues, a lot of topics to debate. For sure, the common agricultural policy, which is important if it comes to economic sustainability, how to use the money of the CAP in order to support farmers, how to guarantee, how to organize vibrant rural areas, which are also ready for multifunctionality, agritourism, for example. What can we do if market imbalances occur? We have a complicated situation in this moment due to the imports coming from Ukraine, but we know how important markets are. We must invest in research and development, in advisory systems. A very important question for me, what is the share of the farmers in the value chain? And thereby we are not doing very well. I very often make an example because I'm coming myself from a region where we produce a lot of apples. And the apples which I pay here in Brussels or somewhere in Europe in the supermarket, €2.99, my farmer at home can't be happy if he gets 40 cents. So is this a fair share in the value chain? 25% or less, 20% to produce the product, and the other 80% to pack it and to distribute it and to sell it? Is this a fair value? Is this a fair share in the value chain? Or do we need to improve on this? And then, and this is maybe the biggest challenge, and we voted this morning a report on this in the Agriculture Committee, how to attract young people for agriculture and how keep the sector attractive for young people. We need to be aware that we are in a situation where a lot of people, not only in agriculture, the so-called baby boomers, go out of the working era, and the ones who come in, the youth, they are less. And they will have a lot of opportunities. And we need to keep agriculture attractive also for them. And I was very much surprised. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we had the EPP Youth Week here. Hundreds of young people here outside the European Parliament, intense debating about the future of youth in Europe. And at the end of this week, they had to discuss what they consider as young people the most important topic for Europe. And they voted the most important topic is agriculture. So not digital things, not artificial intelligence, no, agriculture. So young people are interested in farming. So a lot of topics, and we have a very, very interesting panel to debate all these things. We have the first Vice President of COPA, Massimiliano Giansanti. Prego, Presidente. Then we have Lefteris Avgenakis, who is the Minister for Rural Development and Food in Greece. Welcome, Minister. Then we have Peter Haug. Peter Haug is the Minister for Food, Rural Affairs and Consumer Protection in the Land Baden-Württemberg in Germany. Welcome. Then we have Carmen Crespo. Carmen Crespo is the Minister for Agriculture, Livestock, Fishery and Sustainable Development in Andalusia. Bienvenida, señora ministra. And we have a young farmer, Diana Lenzi, who is the former president of the European Council of Young Farmers, and she's herself a young farmer in Tuscany in Italy. Benvenuta. So I would like to give immediately the floor to our keynote speaker, Massimiliano Giansanti, for his intervention. He's, as I said, first Vice President of COPA. Presidente. Prego.
Benvenuti a tutti.
Welcome everyone, thank you. On behalf of President Lambert, I'd like to welcome all farmers from COPA. I would like to thank the President von der Leyen, President Weber, for inviting me to this important roundtable and event. The EPP is taking part in a larger debate on agriculture and the future of agriculture at a European level. So thank you for wanting to include our voice too. Dear Ministers, President Linz, dear Herbert, honourable members of the various member countries, and dear farmer friends. First of all, I am a farmer. I am an Italian farmer. I produce grains, cereals, dairy products, kiwis, a product that is actually protected by Europe, Parmesan cheese, and all of these are made by my family. I am a third-generation farmer, and we've obviously tried to focus more and more on the topical issues in European agriculture. On the one hand, protecting natural resources, on the other hand, protecting consumer needs in the production of commodities and in producing foodstuffs that are emitted into the market. We obviously try to produce as much as we can, but we also try and be sustainable. We have a completely sustainable farm because we have invested plenty over the last few years in solar energy. I am also the president of a Confagricoltura, the Italian Association of Farmers, and the first vice president of COPA. Dear Herbert, as you know, during this legislation, none of us could have ever imagined that during this legislature and during this mandate, during which the UK actually exited the European Union, we had Brexit. These were very difficult years. We had to deal with the consequences of Brexit, and this was something unfathomable. At the same time, we could have never imagined to have war near Europe, not to mention the effects of climate change. President von der Leyen recalled what happened, for instance, in Italy when the Emilia-Romagna region was flooded. The same goes with the problems that we had in Spain, various floodings all over Europe. These are natural emergencies that should make us reflect. As far as the political debate is concerned, these last 5 years were very important for us farmers. We took part in the creation of a new CAP, and we also took part in various debates with all of the institutions, the European Parliament, the European Commission, the Council, on various topics related to the European Green Deal. Sometimes we tried to present our viewpoint, sometimes we listened. We weren't always in agreement, it has to be said, with the European Commission. There are challenges ahead, big challenges ahead. However, they are not impossible. First and foremost, in the light of the increase of the world population and the increase of the per capita GDP, there are clearly challenges. This is something that should make us think. In COPA, we had an exchange with Mexican and Canadian farmers. According to a study, 50% of food waste comes from China. Now, this is something that Europe is also starting to think about. That is to say, thinking about a more sustainable production. We have to do so by protecting natural resources. This is absolutely fundamental. All farmers, as the farmer that took the floor before me said, all farmers are not part of the problem. We, if anything, suffer the consequences of climate change. We therefore need natural resources. We need to protect the fertility of our soils. We need to protect our water resources. We need clean air. All of this is a debate where we want to take part in. There are challenges, of course. Many were already mentioned. And one of the challenges is the farmer's income. We are business people, even though more often than not farmers are not considered economical actors, as if we were placed outside of the economic cycles. We want to be present and active onto the market, and we want to protect our income. This is only normal if you think about it. We therefore welcome the words by Ursula von der Leyen during the State of the Union address. She said that she will promise to open a strategic dialogue, and being willing to do so is very important for us. This is very important because there will be a dialogue on the future of agriculture. It is therefore important to be here to talk about the new European Farmers Deal, something that as Copa Cogeca we would like to contribute to. Copa Cogeca has 4 Fs as the future challenge: food, feed, fibre and fuel. The topic of agriculture is strategic. We need to produce food, we need to produce feed for our livestock. In the wider topic of the circular economy, we need to obviously move towards more greener energy. We need to produce biofuel and use agricultural byproducts. We need to produce biogas, biomethane, going all the way to wind energy instead of using solar energy, for instance. It is therefore paramount to stress the centrality of agriculture and to use new models. We are not afraid of change. We know that we are living a transition and we want to be actors that take part in this. There's only agriculture outside of metropolitan areas. That's the only driver of the local economy, and it also fosters the protection of the local environment. I am proud to say that we are the backbone of Europe. We ensure that all of the territory, north, south to east to west, continues to be productive, and it is that thanks to our strength and thanks to the central role that we play in the economy from an economic and social standpoint, we believe that the various proposals that may emerge from the debate between the Commission, the Parliament and the Council all should start from the budget and the multi-annual budget. It would be paramount to allocate the right resources to the various expenses. The CAP is not the only tool. If we talk about transition towards new models, the farmers should be taken hand to hand and accompanied along this path. If we think, as we have said, that agriculture is crucial, we need to protect our market. Our market, the quality of our market is increasingly higher, and we need to be open towards our markets. If we have an open market, the quality standards we've reached in Europe must be protected. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense for European agriculture to reach such standards. All future legislative proposals should be based on studies and on empirical evidence. We cannot simply base ourselves on ideology. If our political proposals are not assessed from an economical or social standpoint, then they will not stand. The same goes for the following. As European farmers, we would like and we demand that the future Agriculture Commissioner has a pivotal role in the Commission. It isn't possible, it is that an Agriculture Commissioner doesn't have a central role and a pivotal role in the policies of the European Commission. Now more than ever, these are our 4 macro objectives. The first one is protective farmers' income, protective cooperatives' income, and as Robert Dorfmann said, protecting our position in the supply chain. This is very important. the role of farmers we have a very marginal role in providing added value. We also need to ensure generational turnover. The youth are the future, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. This will ensure that the newer generation will meet the future needs of the future and the needs of the baby boomers. Thirdly, President von der Leyen said it in a speech already. Innovation, new technologies in agriculture and using science. All of this will be possible only if we believe in the objectives that we decided to set out. We need to find solutions as soon as possible. We need to be open to innovation and using data, but this should be managed as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, to give farmers new tools. Fourthly, we need to manage risks. Faced with climate change, farmers working on the field but also working in global markets are at risk, and we therefore need new tools that will allow us to manage risks and protect farmers' income. Risk management tools will be therefore crucial in the years to come. We need to work more on competitiveness and sustainability. In order to do so, the new CAP reform must start from these topics. Then, something I feel like I should mention is the recent debate on the wolves, for instance. For years now, European farmers have been telling the Parliament, our ministers, our governments, that the wild fauna is more and more important. I wouldn't want in the future to be turned into a wild boar farmer rather than a sheep farmer or a pig farmer. If I see where fauna is present and all of the damages that it causes, it has to be said that you lose count. Finally, many have already said that we want the structure to be easier, and we want there to be less red tape. We want to be working on the field. Too much time is already allocated to deal with the documentation and all of the various tasks. All of this is right. I am not disputing that, but the digital transition will allow us to save time. So please give us the tool and the time to deal more with the food production. I will conclude. As COPA-COGECA, I believe that an agricultural strategy is fundamental. We would like to start from Article 38 of the Treaty of Rome. In that treaty, the founding fathers that created the European Community set out a few important points. We need to start from those. First of all, we need to improve the production of agriculture, 1958-1960. Secondly, we need to ensure a right livelihood for farmers and their partners. Thirdly, we talked about stabilizing markets. Fourthly, ensuring food security. Fifthly, ensuring fair prices to consumers. Article 38 in the Treaty of Rome set out challenges that at the time the Commissioner founding fathers decided to set out. 70 years later, we think that these challenges are still there, and we would like to talk about them with the European Parliament and the European Commission. Thank you.
Grazie, Presidente. Thank you very much for this inspiring keynote speech. Just to remind you, we will have a debate also at the end of this panel. We will start the collection of speakers from zero, so we will not take the request from the last panels. If you want to speak in this panel, after this panel, please let us know. Our staff will be around. Please let us know who wants to speak. Now we have four very distinguished panelists. I would like to stay within 5 minutes because I think it's important and very interesting to have also some time for the debate afterwards. And I would like to start with Minister Lefteris Afganakis, Minister for Agriculture from Greece. Please.
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to be here with the EPP. Our political family continues with its innovative approach and a very human approach in the problems and the challenges that we are facing or we are going to face in the future. The agricultural sector is the main pillar of the European economy, and it is a central policy, and it has been a central policy since 1957, from the beginning of the European Community. This is very important to remember, that the EPP has always set a priority, the strengthening of agricultural production, the competitiveness of agricultural products, and as well as the food security, and has always supported and been side by side on the side of the agricultural family. Ladies and gentlemen, the challenges faced by the agricultural sector are many and numerous and complex. They go beyond the member state borders, and we're facing a historically different and concerning period, which is the result of external factors such as the energy crisis and the pandemic, the cost of increase of production, the increase of the cost of production, and also, as mentioned by the previous panel, the climate change that has a significant impact on the production. And I'd like to focus on this because with the recent developments in my country with the natural disasters changes the political landscape in Greece, and also the consequences are intrinsically linked to the sustainability of agriculture. These extreme weather conditions that hit my country in recent days confirm undoubtedly that the impact of climate change are a reality and not just some dystopian scenario. The catastrophic forest fires in Rhodes, in Evia, in the region of Attica, Magnesia, and also the forest in Evros, one of the biggest fires in the history of Europe, with over 500,000 hectares, and the Daniel storm, which caused one of the biggest floodings that Greece has ever seen, turning the huge area of Thessaly and continental Greece into a huge lake. Our farmers are facing total destruction. Within a few hours, we had almost a quarter of our agricultural production that disappeared. The Thessaly plain alone covers 24% of our agricultural production and 12% of agricultural land of our country. Thessaly, and the flooded Thessaly, amounts to 5.5% of the GDP of our country and produces 57% of arable land, 13% of livestock. Therefore, we're talking about hundreds of agricultural and livestock infrastructures, storage spaces for feed and infrastructure. All these have been completely destroyed. Therefore, we've had a major impact that's had a huge impact on the society, the economy, the agricultural production, and a high risk for food safety in the country and sufficiency. Therefore, we're talking about the interlink between the food sustainability and climate sustainability. Therefore, our vision needs to look at these challenges in a more efficient way and put this as a foundation of the European solidarity, the future of the future of agriculture. The sustainability of agriculture is facing not only challenges such as the climate change, but also the cost of production, the market itself, the fluctuations in the market, as well as the aging of the labor market, the increased cost of production, and also due to the extreme weather conditions, this creates a very dangerous mix. The EPP has traditionally been on the side of the farmers, and therefore proposed that our policies should focus first on strengthening the competitiveness of our products, and second, on getting more funds for CAP that will strengthen a stable and efficient income for the farmers and their families, and for safeguarding the food safety. Our policies must focus on increasing investments in innovation, as well as the protection of farmers, and through a framework of instruments for the protection of the market. We need to have rules in our trade policies and ensure that imported goods fulfill exactly the same criteria. 2.88% of young people under 24 and 5.1% of people under 35 years old is employed in the agricultural sector. That's according to Eurostat. Therefore, this percentage goes up to 32.8%. So we're talking about almost a third of the population for the ages above 65 years old. Also, the support of women in the agricultural sector is of particular importance. It is estimated that some 36% of people employed in the agricultural sector are women. However, only 19% of women under 25 years old live in rural areas. Therefore, it is particularly important to have short and medium-term policies that provide motives for young people so that they can be employed in the agriculture sector through different facilities, through the creation of new positions, through continuous education for professionals in the agricultural sectors, but also the promotion of new technologies. And these are important measures which are alone are not enough to deal with the issue. We need to have a wide range of measures in culture, in education, in all the different sectors in order to combat the desertification of rural areas and make a more sustainable future for the agricultural sector. Dear colleagues, we're talking about numerous and multi-level challenges. This is our role, the role of policy, to create a vision, to create policy, to design and offer solutions for the present, but as well as the future of the food and agriculture sector, with optimism, with solidarity. The future is already here, and the bet of resilience and sustainability must be won. Therefore, from our side, we need to find solutions. Solutions for the improvement and the development following the European Green Deal and the Common Agricultural Policy. To conclude, I would like to thank you all for hosting this great event. And as you know, New Democracy, our party, and our party leader and Prime Minister, we offer our support to the EPP, and we believe that it's one of the most important parties in the European Centre right in order to always be united in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. One of the aims of this conference is also to speak with farmers. I'm personally convinced if we are doing legislation about farmers, we should do this with farmers. And we have a young farmer with us, Diana Lenzi. She's running a winery in the wonderful Tuscany and producing also other very nice Italian products. So before I would like to give the floor to the two regional ministers, maybe Diana, I would like to ask you for your intervention. Please, 5 minutes if it's possible.
So, members of parliament, national members of parliament, distinguished guests, friends, colleagues, good evening to you all. Actually, I have to thank the EPP very much for this invitation. It is very special for me to be here tonight with you, to be here talking about agriculture for an afternoon. And thank you for taking me away from the very uncomfortable position as a winemaker of being the last panelist and being the last person to keep you from a glass of wine. I must say that, as I said, it is a great pleasure to be here and to having heard talk about agriculture in this way. We put sustainability at the center, but we reinstated the fact that we cannot have environmental sustainability if we do not also address the problems of social and economic sustainability. As farmers, we have said this over and over again. There is no environmental sustainability if we do not have a sufficient economic profitability. And in light of all the recent disruptions that we have talked about, but we've experienced, the war in Ukraine, inflation, the rising costs, we know as farmers how hard it is to make ends meet at this point. And please do not be mistaken, I am not in any way undermining the environmental issue and the climatic crisis. I am a farmer. I am on the forefront of the climatic crisis every day. And trust me, this is one of the years, one of the seasons when I can say I've lost my battle. And so we know that if we want to find a solution, we must absolutely embrace all of the possible solutions. EU agriculture is absolutely vital to the EU economy, not only in terms of its productivity. We are one of the backbones of food safety and of prosperity, but also in terms of the beautiful heritage that we withhold within EU agriculture. We protect and we secure a huge diversity and biodiversity on our farms as farmers. I am a very proud farmer and a winemaker from one of the most ancient, recognized as a valuable and quality tier, and I know that as much as what I produce comes from organic and indigenous varietals, what I manage to bring out to the rest of the world as a quality product comes also from the incredible value that is added by EU promotion. We know that EU agriculture is a flagship of excellence, not only in terms of quality and safety. We also know that as farmers, we are 38% of land is farmed, but over 60% of EU land is under a rural area, which means that we are part of that very intricate and immediate and necessary connective tissue between rural areas and the rest of Europe. We know that where we create prosperous farms, we create livelihoods that are vital for the country nation and the prosperity of those areas. So what is really, I mean, if these are all the things that we know are the things that we value, we know our incredible value in terms of economy, we know our incredible value in terms of social resilience. What is really endangering EU agriculture? It is its incapacity to attract youth. We all know the statistics, it's been repeated a couple of times, but I'll say it once again, hardly 10% of farms in the EU is farmed by someone under the age of 40. I can barely consider myself a young farmer anymore. And without a sufficient generational renewal, we are going to lose a huge part of that prosperity, of that diversity, of that wonderful beauty that is hidden in every single corner of EU agriculture. our food systems are going to become more vulnerable, and they are going to become less of what we pride ourselves for. We are losing farms across Europe. Farms are closing, and in a way, we are not losing productivity. And we might consider this as a non-problem. No, if we have productivity, even if we have less farms, where's the problem? The problem is exactly in the fact that if we do not bring in a new generation, and we do not bring in the wonderful power of innovation that comes through a new generation, we are not going to have that bulge that we need also in EU agriculture to actually succeed in a transition. So I firmly believe that if we want to look forward together, if we want a strategic dialogue on the future of agriculture, we must put generational renewal at the center of this. And that is why I incredibly welcome the vote this morning in the Parliament on the initiative on generational renewal, which is an initial step. Because, please, do not say that we need to make agriculture sexy again if we want to attract youth. I do not need my job and my career to be sexy. I need it to be gratifying. I need it to be gratifying economically. So let us look at the economic constraints. Let's make agriculture a sector that is actually viable, that can create good livelihoods for the farmers and farm workers, that can be profitable. Let's unlock all of the problems that are keeping youth from entering the sector. We often say it's access to credit and access to land. We need instruments for youth that can actually overcome these two obstacles. We must also find the courage to address the social issues. There is a lot of still social demeanor when it comes to agriculture and to the role we have. Let's start talking about farmers as food heroes in Europe. Let's also address the fact that farmers live in isolated conditions, in very stressful conditions, that this is an issue and that we as a collective must address it if we want to protect our food system. And also, of course, let's start providing farmers with the instruments that they need in order to start winning the battle against climate change. I said it, we are on the forefront. We are constantly in open air against what climate is bringing up for us. And so we need new instruments, we need new seeds, we need new technology, and we need to be able to use this and to adapt it to our farming systems in order to provide productivity, in order to provide and protect that wonderful heritage we have, and to create a livelihood in the rural areas that make Europe so beautiful. Thank you.
Grazie, Diana. Thank you very much. Regions are extremely important if it comes to agriculture policy. And we had in the first panel national ministers. Also in this panel we have the Greek national minister. But I'm particularly proud that we have two ministers from important European regions. I would like to start with Minister Carmen Crespo. Madame von der Leyen mentioned your region, unfortunately not because of a problem, the droughts you had. But you are minister of a big region and a very important region if it comes to agriculture policy. Tiene la palabra, señora ministra.
Muchas gracias y buenas.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. Thank you very much, dear Herbert and the rest of the panelists. This is a very important day for the EPP. And thank you very much to the ministers and the representatives of the SEJA. And I also want to say hello to José Ignacio Zoido and Dolores that are amongst us, very important members of this delegation. I would like to thank the European Popular Party, the possibility they grant us to be in this very key event 300 days ahead of the next European elections. I am very convinced in the European project, and I believe that the EPP, as it has happened before, needs to have a very strong leadership in terms of redirecting the agricultural policy today and tomorrow in the future. Therefore, today it is playing an important role to this end. Agriculture is a very important economic sector, and normally we are used to having different peaks and lacks of balance. This is a constant lack of equilibrium due to different internal or outside factors that affect agriculture. Today we are living with important imbalances. They are quite deep. This is coupled with a very acute crisis that we need to face due to droughts, the Ukrainian invasion, inflation, cost of living. This means important losses of income for our agriculture, and this has an impact in the economic impact. Von der Leyen said this: we need to open a strategic dialogue about the future of our agriculture in the European Union. The moment has come. The EPP needs to be united and face all of these challenges as it has done before. Our situation, our farmers in the fields, they all understand that in the past few years, farmers have listened to many messages about the sustainability of our farms. And it is true. We need to be more sustainable. Our farmers need to be environmentally and socially sustainable. But this needs to be coupled with cost effectiveness. Otherwise, we won't have a future. If a crop is not cost effective, then it will disappear very quickly. And sustainability as well, because this will be abundant and there won't be production, and we won't have the necessary change of generations that is so much needed today in the fields, in the countryside, in the rural areas of Europe. So we need to go hand in hand, sustainability, cost effectiveness, having the same importance. Like this, we will bring more balance in a very unbalanced agricultural sector today. And what can we do about this? We need to work on the directives, the Green Deal, the CAP, the reduction of phytosanitary products. And there are other factors that don't depend so much on us. There are external factors. For example, the weather. We can't have an impact on the weather. 45% of the European land is already under an alarm for lack of rain. And this has been one of the hottest summers in Europe. And this is not only in the south of Europe. We can talk about Spain, but the same can be said and applied to Central Europe and even Northern Europe. Drought is being very damaging as a consequence of climate change, and we cannot allow to leave farmers alone against this big challenge. For example, in the south of Europe, in Andalusia, we have lost 100% of cereal, 95% of rice, 60% of olives, and 45% of fruit and vegetables only this year. In Spain, 80% of arable land has been affected. In Andalusia as well, together with the production costs, this has led a ponderation of 115% that can be translated into a 30% reduction of income, a very important loss of purchasing power for farmers, almost 8%. Clearly, this needs to be solved in the present and in the future. And we ask ourselves how. It won't be easy, we are aware of this, but we need to start working on it. We need to address policies to those places where they need to be more active. We need to manage water. We need to have a sustainable use of water. Today, this needs to be distributed in a better way. Scientists need to be leading the teams, but we need to respect the different ecological channels. We need to find different transferences and projects or invest in generated water. This continent needs to be the one that is generating the highest amounts of water. Like this, we will be putting an extra quality mark on our products. This is essential for the present, but most of all for the future. Andalusia, at the current time, is having up to 17 cubic meters of generated water. We want to increase to 140 cubic meters of generated water. And this is part of many common objectives. But there is bad governance of many European funds. The regional administrations need to have a better usage of public funds. we have lost this hydraulic perspective. Without water, there is no agriculture, there is no food security. During the COVID pandemic, we refer ourselves to food security so often, but sometimes we forget about this important concept when we are implementing our directives. We need to be cost effective, and we need to be economically viable. We need to be an important social factor, and as President von der Leyen said, we need to start a new analysis on the European deal. We need to find a better balance between sustainable policies and the cost effectiveness of these measures so that farmers can make ends meet. We have referred ourselves to the law on the restoration of nature and common agricultural policy. We need to be more efficient in case of droughts, floods, facing climate change. We need to find alternative measures to reduce 50% of phytosanitary products. And now we need to include a new regulation. We need to include the respect for farmers, European producers, and farmers that come from third countries. We have agreements with third countries, and thanks to those agreements we have their products in Europe. Equality is a fundamental principle in Europe. Therefore, we cannot let more time pass by without that sustainability and quality seal in those agreements with third countries. We need to have special clauses that allow to have an equal playing field towards all producers. We need to increase the respect towards our farmers. This is a must. We are also talking about respecting consumers. The European consumer is demanding more healthier products, more sustainable products in terms of social responsibility, environmental sustainability, etc. In those agreements that we sign with third countries, we need to include these clauses to make sure that social and environmental sustainability are going to be respected, and we need healthy products from third countries with the necessary sustainable practices involved. So this is a very interesting avenue to follow, and I would like to mention again President von der Leyen. We cannot leave anyone behind. Of course not. We can't leave anyone behind. We can't do more with less resources. Balance is essential in this sector. Agriculture, food is an essential part of constructing a European Union that we want to grow and give more opportunities for all citizens of the Union to access this very important economic sector. Our task is to guarantee a quality food for all European citizens, and to this end we need to find a better balance in agriculture and create more possibilities for the incorporation of the new generation of farmers in this very fundamental sector for the interest of the Union. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, señora ministra.
Thank you, Minister.
Peter Haug. Peter Haug is minister in a region which is led by the Greens, so in a government, in a coalition together with the Greens. He has been minister for many years, and I think it is extremely interesting hearing from your point what is this defending this economic, let's say, part of sustainability in a coalition where very often the Greens see only the ecological part of sustainability. Bitte, Peter.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Herbert, dear listeners, first thank you very much for the invitation to this panel. The EPP is the only party looking after farmers in rural areas in Germany and in Europe, as we can see in this event. I just wanted to make a small contribution from a region which is an industrial region. We're in the southwest of Germany, 11 million inhabitants, industry, lots of industry, Porsche, Daimler-Benz, Bosch or Liebherr. You probably know these brands. This is why 89% of our population work in industry and in trade, and only 1% work in agriculture. Nevertheless, 40% of agricultural areas where we produce on, and 40% forestry, where we also produce forestry products. Therefore, these are a few points. If we talk about a vision for agriculture, that we need to tackle in the next mandate of this Parliament, because the most recent proposals of the Commission give us a little bit more hope, because it's about genetics, but otherwise the sustainable use of regulation of pesticides and the restoration of nature, these proposals were proposals that were going against agriculture and hinder agriculture. Even our Green coalition partner agrees with that. I must stress this, because in the meantime there is people see that restriction shouldn't go too far. Let me start with a few points. First, we need to have more incentives and less prohibitions. For many years, the European Commission worked well, the European Union worked well with incentives, and we were successful. Let me give you one example. Germany was blamed for not sticking to the nitrate directive in Baden-Württemberg, and in our region we tried to implement this nitrate directive at a very early stage. 40 years ago, with the help of the European Union, we had an environmental program on this topic, and the result is today that we are the best across Europe. We have 1% of red areas above the 50 milligrams of nitrate, nothing more, only 1%, and we were able to achieve that over 40 years in a sustainable policy and consistent policy to reduce nitrates and nitrogen effluents. So more incentives and less prohibitions. Second point, a consistency in our objectives. The objectives, the goals of the European Union in various policy areas sometimes are at loggerheads, very often. When we're talking about wolves earlier on, the wolf is a real problem for us in the meantime, although in Baden-Württemberg we only have 5 wolves, all counted. But those 5 terrorize animal husbandry in one sensitive region, and that's in the hilly part of Baden-Württemberg. We want pasture as a CO2 sink. We want to keep that in addition to our forests. And the European Nature Protection Law contradicts that. I cannot understand this, because internationally wolves are not in danger. Only the FFH legislation at European define wolves as an endangered species, which I cannot understand. One could also see it in other areas, for instance, preserving pasture land. To be able to do that, I need cattle, because cattle creates pasture. We have many meadows we cannot keep because we don't have enough animals. And this is why we need to do everything we can to animate farmers to keep livestock. The third point, Farm to Fork is certainly correct in terms of strategy, so the goals are all okay for me. The strategy is very important, the Farm to Fork strategy, but it's equally important not only to focus on production of foodstuff. The challenge of this century is climate change, overcoming climate change. If we want to do that, then we need to use the forces of agriculture to do that, including a number of production structures in agriculture, including the fact that production structures of the organic farming is not only there for wolves and for forests, but also for renewable crops on our fields. We need to get away from fossil fuels, clear, but if we need to leave one thing, we need to get into other thing, and that's regenerative fuels. So we need to say yes and not a lukewarm yes or a maybe. So that's very important, because this has a potential to create value in rural areas if we agree to do so. Renewable energies, plant them. And using land, agricultural land, for regenerative energy, certainly, but not the best production areas where we have the best land, which then would only be used for regenerative fuel. That would be wrong. There are some hybrid forms of PV photovoltaic, the agricultural use at the bottom, and on top of that, using these areas for energy. For years, I've been fighting for agri-photovoltaic. Combine that with keeping chickens open air. But the doors remain closed at the Commission. So if you are in favor of regenerative energy, if you are in favor of overcoming climate change, you need to be consistent. All those who can make a contribution should be included. But instead of giving us some reasons and say, oh no, this is no longer animals that run freely. My fourth point I wanted to mention is the topping of the age structures in rural areas, which in my portfolio, structural development in rural areas is part of my portfolio. That's two-thirds of the area, 1/3 of the population. That's important for me, and we need to do everything we can. And the Fund for Regional and Development helps us, not only FEDER, but we need to do everything we can to further develop these rural areas so that we can have value creation in these rural areas. Which brings me at the gist of my presentation. All this can only happen if the European Commission and the European Union, other national governments, give us some leeway in the regions to implement all this. The agricultural budget, if it's administered centrally, and there's a trend towards this. We have a national budget. This takes away this wiggle room for regions, which means that we might miss these goals, and we're no longer as focused as in the past. And therefore, I think it's sensible to try improve these things too. The last thing I wanted to say, I expect from the EPP that we should stress the idea of freedom. Farmers are good and they fulfill what we expect of them if we let them do. If we don't believe that we need to instruct them from A to Z or Alpha to Omega in the Greek alphabet, and we need to follow them and tell them what they need to do. So they're all well trained. Of course, we need to check, that's okay, see whether we reach our objectives, but we need to give them degrees of freedom and let them work. You need that, particularly in a time when it's all about innovation, overcoming crises, the inflation crisis, overcoming the Russian invasion and its consequences, and overcoming climate change. In times like that, you need degrees of freedom, you need innovation, and not instructions. People who are instructed too much are not innovative. Thank you very much.
Herzlichen Dank, Peter. Thank you very much. So now I have 15 minutes for the debate and a long list of speakers. So I would say normally here this is the plenary of the House. If we speak here as a member, normally you have 1 minute speaking time. So if you intervene, please feel as like a member of the European Parliament. Speak for 1 minute, not more. Because this gives the possibility to have more ideas and more opinions in this room, and I think this is extremely important. I would like to start immediately with Mr. Jean-Michel Schäfer. Please. Oui. 1 minute.
Thank you for your invitation. I just wanted to make an additional comment When we talk about the future of farming, of course, one talks about the common agricultural policy, but there's another policy which is really important for the future of agriculture, namely, what kind of commercial policy do we want to have? And the Minister for Agriculture in Andalusia mentioned it. Let's take poultry, for instance. The first imported meat these days is poultry, following free trade agreements. So something needs to be reflected upon here. We need to have mirror clauses. In other words, we need to impose our production conditions in the agreements we sign with other regions in the world. When you raise poultry in Europe, there is a salmonella check. There is no disinfection with bleach. It is prohibited. It is also prohibited to use growth activator antibiotics here. However, these conditions are not imposed on every country we trade with. We think as farmers that in order to be on an equal footing and be as competitive as the other farmers in the world, but also to secure the competitiveness of our agricultural products, it would be very important to impose our own production rules in the free trade agreements that we sign. And then I'd like to finish on the origin of products.
Pardon. J'avais encore un truc sur l'origine.
No, we need, otherwise it's not possible. We cannot. It's already more than 2 minutes. Next one is a farmer from Finland, Max Schulman.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you really for very good discussions that we had in the first and also in the second panel. Just a very quick question. I mean, we have all heard we have a possibility to use tools, we have a toolbox in the farming, but to be able to do that, we also need a secure, economical environment in front of us. So how do you, as part of the legislative chain, make sure that we in the future as well will have an adequate farm income in place to make the investments needed to be able to make sure that we have a social but also an environmental sustainability together with an economical sustainability on our plate so that we can pass on our production to the next generation and the generation after that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then I would like to give the floor to Madame Ivana Suchnova from Czech Republic.
Hello, my name is Ivana. I'm here to represent Biopreparati, which is a Czech biotech company that has been manufacturing and developing biofungicides for the past 20 years. The Czech company has been able to gain trust of hundreds of farmers during the past decade and is able to deliver the same yield as the standard fungicides that have been used to date. And I would like to ask whether EPP is planning to support innovative businesses such as Biopreparati in pursuing a more sustainable way of protecting plants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then the next one, Duarte Mira from Portuguese Farmers.
Thank you very much. I will be brief. Thank for the EPP Group for organizing these events in such a critical and difficult time for the European agriculture. There's a lot of talk about farmers and difficulties, which we all know about, and we have been discussing these during the afternoon, which you all know about the rising production costs, low prices for products, the effects of climate change, the problem of the Russian occupation of Ukraine, but solutions are needed. And to increase farmers' incomes. And my question for the panel is, what are the solutions for the future CAP? And I will ask again, and I will ask for the Portuguese farmers and European farmers the support of the EPP, because the elections are coming and a new commission are coming. So please fight for a fair and a fair budget for the European farmers, because we need it. And thank you very much for the EPP Group to support the Young Farmers Congress that will be held on the 6th of December. And we have a stand outside. Please have a look. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Duarte. Next one is Madame Stella Velicki.
Mon nom c'est Stella Veliki.
I am Stella Veliki. I'm a physicist and IT specialist, a member of the European Physical Society. I have a question regarding new technologies and their application in agriculture. My question is the following. Did you create or do you use models based on artificial intelligence that would be adaptable for each farmer and would help each farmer produce more efficiently and at a lesser cost? Let me give you a concrete example. In such models, you can, for instance, introduce limit situations. In other words, what happens in case there's a drought, in case there's a flood, when the crop is completely destroyed. Let's say if we have a farmer with animals on the farm, he can know exactly how much energy is needed, how much it would cost, how this energy can be efficiently managed, how he could produce this energy himself. So all the data can actually be introduced in the model, and the model will deliver precise answers and very efficient answers. So do you have any projects? Do you have any pilot projects going in that direction? And if so, could I have concrete examples, please?
Leo Tiefenthaler.
Ja, danke, Herr Moderator.
Yeah, thank you, dear facilitator, for giving me the floor. Thank you, of course, for the opportunity to take part in your discussion today. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard a lot about natural disasters, fires, floodings. Massimiliano, John, thank you for your words. I think we have a lot to do. We have hail, we have wind increases, sun effects as well, burning effects, and then we have effects like this that are in the market economy as well, which is quite natural. But the quite nicely functioning insurance system we've been having for years now, based on an EU model with guarantees in the future as well. Do you have an opportunity that the funding can be maintained in the future as well for these insurance systems? And then we have a major problem with wildfire in Trentino, South Tyrol, the northern region of Italy. We have attacks from wolves. And has been a lot of dead animals, a lot of damages here, and then we have a lot of problems with bears as well. More than 100 bears in our region, and we had several attacks from bears on humans as well. One deadly incident, a young jogger who had to pay with his life this encounter, and we have to find solutions. Otherwise, we're going to have a major problem for agriculture with different areas. Also with tourism and mountain pastures, and we are asking for your help and support. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Madame Dori Blanc. Madame Blanc, you here?
Gracias, presidente. Yo creo que todos los
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that all the speakers have mentioned the whole quantity of threats that we have in front of us: climate change, drought, heat, depopulation in rural areas, lack of youngsters, many problems. So I have a very specific question here. Is the European Commission aware, is the European Parliament also aware to know that it's completely impossible to face all this with the current budget? Do they really think that we will be able to do all we are talking about with this budget? We need to put agriculture in the core of the system in order to be able to face properly all these threats. Thank you very much.
The next one is my colleague, member of the European Parliament from Greece, Maria Spirac. Please, Maria.
Thank you.
Congratulations for the timely organisation of this conference. It is on the core of the issues we face. I would like first of all to welcome the ministers, and particularly Minister Avgenakis, who is representing the Greek government. And I would like to go straight forward on the existential threat of our agriculture, which is the climate crisis. Bearing in mind that only this summer we face damaging heat waves, we face middle fires, we face also floods. I would like to ask you about the proposal to establish a rapid reaction mechanism in terms of budget and in terms of securing food supply. And I think that it is a very important step forward from EPP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the last one, but I cannot take more, is Mr. Andrea Pulea.
Good evening, my name is Andrea Polero and I come from Sicily. First of all, I'd like to thank the President for having organised this very timely conference on very topical issues, and these will be very important issues for the near future. I have a question for the ministers. We've talked about sustainability a great deal. We've talked about food security too. We've also talked about technological innovation. How are producers or businessmen rewarded if they use these tools? Let me talk to you about Sicily. We have a lot of POD, citrus fruit and olive oil, and they've been sold at the same price that they were sold at 20 years ago. How can a business person invest on these topics if there's no return on the investment? We're already at dire straits. Do we have to live with an even more difficult situation?
We collected a lot of questions. It's impossible to answer to all of them because we have 3 minutes for the answer. So I would like to ask my panelists to spend like 30 seconds for a very short closing remark. Please, Massimiliano.
I think that, if anything, we're all in agreement that we have to guarantee food security for our citizens. We have to therefore look into the international treaties that are being negotiated these days. We also need to create a new CAP that deals with production and also ensures the farmers' income and also deals with sustainability. Otherwise, if we continue like this, we're asking more and more from farmers, but farmers do not receive anything and they get tired and they stop.
Thank you very much. I have deeply European values, and of course my country is in the core of European values, and therefore the trust and belief in European values. New Democracy, our party, is part of the big family of the EPP, and the EPP is the party that has been on side and has always supported farmers, European farmers and their problems. Many of the concerns that we heard here, these are concerns that have been discussed and within the EPP, and of course with the initiatives that the EPP has taken, primarily legislative initiatives. We've addressed many of the issues that have been put forward here. I believe that this dialogue will continue, and I hope and I wish everyone good luck with the challenges ahead.
Maybe first of all a remark concerning the income situation and how it might be possible to be sustainable here as well. Well, I think income situations will not be determined by politicians, only the framework conditions to get there. And the EPP, in the view of the elections, will have to be involved in bringing up framework conditions allowing to get there. This is not fully the case everywhere. First, when we admit certain phytosanitary products. Proposals have been presented quite a while ago, but now we have to really get there and find an agreement for the phytosanitary situation. Then we have to make sure what can be done as well with food coming into the European Union from associated states. On what basis will they be produced? This is very important in the context of competition aspects. And then concerning models for farmers to be as efficient as possible and as sustainable as possible in their production activity. We have certain models already, and as regional and national authorities we try to present them to farmers as well, but it depends on the individual situation of the farms and the knowledge and expertise of the farmers in how far they're able to implement these, and this will be linked there directly to success or failure. Under more or less comparable situations, we have farmers having really high profits and others in the same natural surrounding under similar conditions are losing money. Some people are able to implement it efficiently and others don't. And it's really in individual situations we find in the crafts and in the industrial area as well. So it depends on individual expertise as well. Coming back to the wool situation and volatile prices, I just wanted to say that it's also going to be a matter of moderate approach in choosing protection situations and not be in a general situation of production with no exception whatsoever, no exemptions whatsoever. So we have to adapt to individual situations in Germany, and then similarly in Italy we have situations where we have more wolves per square kilometer as we have in Scandinavia or Northern America. So here we have to intervene and have certain exemptions foreseen for absolute protection rules.
Por permitirme estar en esta gran mesa.
Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. Thanks, Herbert, and thanks to the EPP party. I would like to insist in what I was saying before. There has to be a balance between profitability and sustainability. And there are many things that can be put on the table. There are many things that can be done in the future for the agricultural policy, because all the farmers are asking to have something which is simpler, simplify their lives. They have a huge problem for accessing funding. And there is something which has already been mentioned here before. First of all, we are talking about an economic sector here, so we cannot forget about the market aspect. And this means that the market regulations have to be adequate. We need to have a competitive sector, and we need to be profitable at the same time. And we have to respect all our producers, but we also have to think about the third countries, because we need to keep growing, but always in a sustainable way. And if we have these mirror clauses within our agreements with third countries, then we will also help those countries to be more sustainable themselves, and we will be providing them more economic possibilities, because we are respecting everyone. We are respecting our producers, but also the producers in the third countries. And we are sending an important message here. Consumers are feeding people, and consumers in this specific sector have to be also included, because they are a key element in our policies. Thank you.
So on the complexity that I hear of, we have so many problems to solve, how do we start, how do we not feel overwhelmed? I will just use the quote that Rome wasn't built in a day, but Massimiliano and I can relate to the fact that, boy, was it worth it. And this is what we have to aspire to. We have a huge complexity of problems to solve. Maybe for a very long time we tried to give agriculture the solution, no? We tried to give the patient the therapy without ever having really evaluated the patient, without having diagnosed him, or understood if that therapy was actually something that was going to cure the patient or not. The strategic dialogue that is being proposed here, the idea of talking to the patient, to talking to the farmers, to talking to agriculture, and helping them be part of the solution, so seeing what is needed, where and how to unlock all of the potential that is in that solution, that is how we're going to get to Rome. That is how we are going to get to a greater EU agriculture. And this type of dialogue, this exercise that we did here today, this afternoon of talking very pragmatically, very freely, very specifically about EU agriculture, its problems, but its potential, is definitely a first step.
Thank you very much. Great panelists, thank you very much for your contribution. We're going to close the conference now. Before to close, I would like to give a special applause to these people who are behind me. This is actually people who work. They worked, I can tell you, they worked hard for months to organize this conference very much. Thank you very much also for this. And I would like to thank also the interpreters, and maybe we can have some minutes more, because now I would like to hand over to Siegfried Mureșan. Siegfried Mureșan is the Vice President of our EPP Group responsible for agriculture. Please, Siegfried.
Thank you very much, Herbert. Good afternoon, good evening also from my side. Firstly, thank you very much for this very fruitful afternoon. The scope of the EPP, when we had this idea to come together this afternoon, was to bring politicians and farmers together, to bring politicians at local, regional, national and European level together with you, with farmers, so that we can explain our decisions to you, but that we can also listen to you. Listen what are the difficulties that you are facing, where Europe is helping you, and also hear from you what we can do better, where you will need more help. And I think this was a very good beginning today. And I think we are closer to our objective, because our objective as EPP is to make sure that agriculture, farmers and the rural areas are at the center of decisions of European policy making in the next years. We believe this is needed because for us, for the EPP, it is about high quality food products. It is about the rural areas as a whole. It is about the right framework for farmers, but it is also about the high living standards of people in living in rural areas. Our vision as EPP is to make sure that there is no discrepancy between standard of living in a city or in a village. Our vision is that young people in Europe are attracted by villages, not only by cities. And we know that for this, we have to invest in research and innovation. We have to improve infrastructure in villages. We have to make sure that there are enough public services, education, healthcare, and of high quality. And we know we have to make agriculture more attractive for young farmers. Herbert Dorfmann spoke about it today, and he does talk about it and work for it on a permanent basis. That will structurally improve the situation of agriculture if young farmers are attracted by agriculture. We as an EPP group, for example, every year are trying to obtain increases of allocations from the EU budget, especially to young farmers. This year, we are proposing as an EPP group 45 million euros more for young farmers only next year. I am responsible for the negotiations of the budget next year, and I can commit that this is a priority. We, of course, understand that we live in a world that changes. And of course, all of us have to evolve, we have to reform, we have to modernize ourselves. But, for example, whenever there is a new priority, old priorities, traditional priorities should not be forgotten. One common objective that we have right now is to pollute less. To pollute less, to tackle climate changes better, to make our rural and urban areas cleaner and greener. But let me say very clearly, and this is also what Manfred Weber said in the beginning, our vision is a Green Deal with the farmers, not against the farmers of Europe. And politicians cannot tell farmers, you have to pollute less so that others can pollute more. No. We all have to make efforts, but the efforts need to be balanced. And when we have to make an effort, we need to know what support is coming, also what financial support is coming, and we need to know that no one is left behind and no one is left alone. Politically, we as an EPP sometimes have a difficult life when we defend farmers, because when legislation is being adopted, the EPP Group always defends farmers, but we sometimes have a difficult life because very often in recent years we were unfortunately the only ones to defend farmers, the agriculture sector here at European level. The left part of the House has mainly their voters in the cities. So they care about the cities, but they forget about the rural areas, about the villages. And we say this is wrong. And this is why we defend farmers, because we see your efforts, we know your importance in society, we want good living conditions in rural areas, and we want to make sure that European decisions made take into account what you need and what you say about these European decisions. This is also why today was about listening, was about hearing from you, and we will continue. We heard today, we saw the President of the Commission, we saw Minister, we heard Minister Peter Haug, we heard several of you talk about the need to act on large carnivores and wolves. In my country also the bear is a problem. I come from Romania, Transylvania. So we need the right balance between protecting the environment, the animal, protecting nature, and ensuring security also for the people. And I feel the European Commission has understood that. The words also from Ursula von der Leyen were clear. The new genome techniques as well are something where we spoke clearly about in favor of the proposal which was made by the European Commission. There was a lot of discussion on the CAP, and here there was a reform. Now the message needs to be clear. No surprises. There is a plan up to 2027. We have to implement it, work on this framework. No new surprises, no new additions from the left part of the House. We heard you saying that you need predictability. Farmers need predictability and they need simplicity. We also discussed about the budget, and here I would like to say one thing. Agriculture has always been a priority of the budget of the European Union, together with cohesion, so the structural funds for investment. But we are now seeing that Europe has new priorities to transition to digital, to green economy, protecting our borders, security and defense, our neighborhood. This is correct, but let me say very clear. New priorities of the European Union should not come at the expense of old priorities, of traditional priorities, because the fact that the priority is an old priority, has been a priority for long, like agriculture is, doesn't mean that it is outdated. It has been a priority for so long because it's right and it's needed and it's correct. So if we want Europe to do more, then we also have to give the European Union the tools to do more. And if we expect more from the budget of the European Union, then we have to make sure that there is the space of maneuver in the budget. Of course, we have to convince our taxpayers that money is well spent, that it is efficient. As people who make decisions regarding public money, we have to make sure that money is spent with big care, that irregularities and fraud are being tackled whenever they appear. But the main message is, if we want Europe to do more, then Europe cannot do more with a smaller budget. Then we have to make sure, if we want Europe to do more, we have to make sure that the budget is also accordingly. So on this note, thank you very much, all of you, for coming today, for the dialogue, for the efforts that you are making, for speaking up. And let me say, from the EPP perspective, this is a beginning. Because as Manfred Weber said in the beginning, in 9 months we're going to European elections. We are going to present an offer to the farmers as EPP. And today helps us to put that offer on paper, to elaborate our electoral program, our electoral manifesto, which I can assure you will contain an important offer for the farmers in Europe. In the end, I would like to thank our two number ones when it comes to agriculture in the EPP Group, Norbert Linz, the President of the Agriculture Committee here in the European Parliament, and Herbert Dorfmann, who is the coordinator of the EPP Group in the Agriculture Committee here. We can give them a big applause, they deserve it. They are those who drive the policies here. They are those who are in permanent dialogue with the member states, with the ministers, with the Commission, and try to defend, even if it's difficult, even when Socialist Greens and others do different things, they stand up for farmers. And of course, thanks to our advisors who are supporting us in the policy field every day, but who have also organized this event today. Thank you very much. They deserve an applause as well. And now we're going for cocktail to continue the interaction. There is a cocktail organized. I think it's on the ground floor. So if you see 2-3 people going into one direction, we just follow to continue the interaction, the discussions. Thank you very much.